This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, sorry, Carla. I was supposed to give you a warning. Hi, Josh. Good morning. We're just starting. I'm Stephanie Halleck, and I am chair of the Board of Agriculture. And today is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. The meeting is now called to order. And I'd like Carla to start by reviewing a few housekeeping items for the meeting, please.
Good morning, everyone. Just a reminder, when you're on the call, if you would please mute your phone or your computer audio, that cuts down on the background noise for us. Also, during the call, we request that board members and presenters only have their cameras on. You will be able to see any screens that are shared or anything with your computer off, so no worries there. Also, if you are looking for any of our pre-meeting materials, they're on the ODA website at oda.direct/board-agriculture. And a reminder that this meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thank you. And I would like you to call the roll, and I'll start. Again, I'm Stephanie Halleck, and I am the current board chair, and I am a public member from the Portland metro area.
Barbara Boyer is not in attendance today. She has an excused absence. So we'll move to Brian Harper.
Yeah, Brian Harper, Vice Chair at Farmer Junction City.
Shantae Johnson.
Shantae Johnson, Farmer, Corbett, Oregon.
Elin Miller.
Yes, Elin Miller, Farmer, Umpqua, Oregon.
Tyson Raymond.
Tyson Raymond, Farmer, Northeastern Oregon.
Luisa Santa Maria.
Luisa Santa Maria, public member and part of Oregon State University Extension.
Josh Zielinski.
Josh Zielinski, Farmer, Salem, Oregon.
Dean Sams.
Yeah, I'm Alan Sams, the Dean of the College of Agricultural Sciences at Oregon State University, ex officio.
Director Taylor.
Alexis Taylor, Director at the Oregon Department of Agriculture.
It looks like we have about 26 people or connections on the phone this morning. If people would like to jump in and introduce themselves. Karen.
Sorry, I have two mute buttons just in case I forget one of them and start talking to somebody. Karen Lewatsky, Rural Partnerships and Water Policy Program Director, Oregon Environmental Council.
Dave Losh.
Hi, this is Dave Losh, State Statistician, USDA National Ag Stat Service out of Portland.
Lisa Hansen.
Lisa Hansen, Deputy Director with the Department of Agriculture.
Lauren.
Lauren Henderson, the Assistant Director with the Department of Agriculture.
Claire Clock.
Claire Clock, Clackamas Soil and Water Conservation District and Clock Farm, Corbett, Oregon.
Helmuth Rogg.
Helmut Rogg, Oregon Department of Agriculture, Plant Protection.
Jess Paulson.
Yes, Jess Paulson, Program Area Director for the Market Access and Certification Programs.
Hillary Foote.
Hi, Hillary Foote, DLCD's Farm Forest Specialist.
Amy Wong.
Good morning, Policy Director, Friends of Family Farmers.
Katie Murray.
Hi, everyone. Katie Murray, Executive Director of Oregonians for Food and Shelter.
Sunny Summers.
Morning, Sunny Summers, Cannabis Policy and Other Special Projects in the Director's Office at Oregon Department of Ag.
Peggy Lynch.
Peggy Lynch, League of Women Voters of Oregon. Thank you for the invite today.
Isaac Stapleton.
Good morning, Isaac Stapleton, Program Director for Food Safety, Animal Health and Identification.
Jonathan Sandow.
Jonathan Sandow, Assistant to Director Taylor and Lisa Hanson.
I think that's everyone. I'll just remind you that please to have the board members and presenters on camera this morning, and also to use the chat box as a sign-in sheet for your name and organization. Thank you.
Okay, Carla, thank you very much. I'd like to remind everybody that public comment is scheduled for 30 minutes at 10:30. No one has signed up to speak. So we also do not have any breaks scheduled. Depending on how the timing goes, I may call for one, but otherwise people can just self-break if we don't end up having time to take a break. Please remember that the meeting is being recorded, and to state your name for the record when you're speaking as best you can, particularly the ones with whom Carla is not so familiar. And also remember to unmute when you want to speak, and to mute when you're not speaking. And also when you're speaking, be sure your picture is on for us to see you, but otherwise it's not necessary, as Carla said, to have the picture is on. So we'll move right to the agenda, and the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion from anyone for that?
So moved. Elin.
Is there a second?
Tyson, second.
Thank you. Elin has moved the minutes and Tyson has seconded. All in favor, say aye, and hopefully you're not on mute, or wave or thumbs up or something.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, time for the director's report. Director Taylor.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. So this week, legislative session begins. The start, well, they met some last week, but those were more just organizational days. The session was supposed to start earlier, but they've been delayed just due to security concerns around Oregon's capital. So they will start officially tomorrow. Session is being, at least as of right now, envisioned to be kind of broken up into 3 blocks, with the first block kind of January, February timeframe where the building will be closed. All committees are expected to be virtual, and with very limited floor sessions just as needed. The legislature has been meeting in person for both in the House and the Senate chamber for floor votes. They hope to be kind of by the middle of March, is what I've heard, to be more in doing some more in-person activities with some limited maybe lobbyists able to be in the building with the legislators, and then by the middle of April to kind of have a more normal, open, public process. Obviously, a lot of things go into play with that, where Marion County is in the various risk categories, where we are with vaccine distribution, et cetera. But that's kind of the rough outline that they're hoping to have right now. All budget hearings, at least as of right now, are told to be expected to be virtual. ODA is usually a pretty early budget presenter, and so we definitely know ours will be virtual, and so we're working on a different format for the budget than we have in years past. Another thing on the legislature and legislative session I wanted to flag, we actually have 2 new chairs over our primary committees of jurisdiction, both in the House and the Senate. So so we are working to get before them and make sure they're reacquainted in a more in-depth way with our agency and some of our issues. One other issue I wanted to highlight today, because it came out post the program reports, is USDA has released their final hemp rules. We're still reading all of them, but there are they address some of the things that we really wanted them to address, which we are thankful for, like they extended the window from 15 days to 30 days for pre-harvest testing. But there's still some concerns that we have with how the rules have been finalized. One of which is there's provisions which require only DEA certified labs to test materials. Oregon has 0 DEA labs, certified labs in the state. And so that's going to be really problematic and continue to be challenging. Now that provision has been delayed until next year, but it will be a challenge if we can't get some of those things resolved. So we're still looking through it and assessing kind of all of the components, but some things turned out positive, I think, from our perspective, and some still remain problematic. It is really unclear how the new administration views hemp and how they're going to handle that. So it'll probably take a little bit of time too for them to come in and get their feet under them and see kind of what they think and where they are with the finalized rules. One other program I wanted to update you on is the Food Security and Farm Worker Safety Program, the FSFS program. This is a program that the state created with the governor's office, with OWEB, with Oregon Housing and Community Services, and OHA. To help, it was a program targeted at helping producers comply with the Oregon OSHA temporary rules, which were released in the spring to try to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 within our agricultural worker and farm worker community. We just finalized the report, so we will share that with the board this week after this meeting if it hasn't been shared already. The FSFS program provided just over $5 million of CARES Act funding to Oregon agricultural producers, again, to help secure that food supply chain and protect our food and ag workers from that potential exposure, particularly targeted through the 2020 harvest season. We focused, just a reminder, in 4 areas. It was targeted at assistance for housing, transportation and field sanitation, additional requirements from Oregon OSHA, and additional requirements around face coverings. We provided $1.85 million in direct reimbursement payments to producers. We also, under this program, coordinated, as you've heard several times now, with OSU to distribute those 4.2 million masks to the ag community. And we actually used $3 million of this funding to help procure some of those KN95 masks that we've been doing, distributing since the spring. It served about 228 producers participated in the program, but approximately 21,000 farm workers benefited from those enhanced safety measures that the program supported. No surprise, Hood River and Marion County were the largest participants, followed by Yamhill, Wasco, and Clackamas. The remaining unspent funds, which is just under $11 million, because $16 million were dedicated to this program, will be sent back to the larger state funds for CARES Act dollars, which DAS is managing. And now the governor and the legislative leaders are really discussing what the priorities are for the state for all of the remaining CARES Act dollars, which were unspent as of the end of December. And those are the main things I wanted to flag and highlight today, but I would be remiss if I did not just acknowledge that obviously we're 3 board members short, with Marty with Grant resigning, with Barbara's excused absence, but then what we didn't know last time when we met was the unexpected passing of Marty. Some of you have known Marty for many years, some of you just a few, some of you knew Marty for decades. I only knew him for 4 years, but I feel very grateful for the time I was able to know him and learn from him. I think all of us know on this board, having worked with him, he was a true leader and really an asset to this board, and I know I'm going to deeply miss him, both his contributions here, but I think across all of Oregon agriculture. And so I just wanted to take a moment to remember him. My thoughts and prayers are obviously with his family, but also the entire 3 Mile team, who I'm sure is still dealing with the huge hole that he has left. But just wanted to acknowledge him, and I know all of you probably have many fond memories, and one of the things I remember is just his sense of humor. He just really brought, I think, levity to the board, and while we're not all able to get together in person, but particularly in those kind of on those tours and those times in between the board work, and I will definitely greatly miss that.
Thank you, Director Taylor. I'm sure that we all share those sentiments. Does anyone have any questions for Director Taylor about her report? Okay, I did notice that a couple of people have joined us. Jan Lee, if you are still listening in, could you unmute and just tell us who you are?
Sure. I'm Jan Lee, the Executive Director of the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts.
Thank you. Welcome. And we are asking, well, I'll let the other introductions and then I'll give you sort of the ground rules. I also have noticed, I don't know who this is, but the name that comes up is Aichele, A-I-C-H-E-L-E. And I'm wondering if you could tell us who that is, please.
My name is Jeff Eichley. I'm here for the farm to school portion. So I'm hoping I'm in the right room. I'm just copied and pasted the link.
I believe that you are. You are welcome.
Okay. All right. I was just going to stay quiet until you needed me. So.
Okay, wonderful. And then there is someone on the phone. Carla, I don't know if you know who that is, or if anybody who is just on the phone, if you can let us know who you are.
Chair Halleck, that might be me, Les Ruark, farmhand. I'm having a late breakfast and having an enjoyable time listening in.
Thank you, Les. I had a vague suspicion that might be you. So welcome, everyone. And again, what we try and do is just have pictures of the board members, have the screens on just for the board members, unless someone else is speaking, and then feel free to put your screen on. And also mute unless you are speaking, and remember to unmute when the time comes. So the next item on the agenda is our budget update from Deputy Director Lisa Hanson.
Good morning, Chair Halleck, members of the board. It's nice to see you all. I think when we met the last time, we had just received the governor's recommended budget, and I went over what we knew at the time at a high level. So some of what you're going to hear you may remember from that conversation, but I'm going to try and click through this, address a couple things that I remember that there were questions about that we weren't sure about at the time, and then I can answer whatever questions you may have. So as we talked about before, if you look at the total numbers in the governor's recommended budget by fund type for the agency, you would say, oh, it looks like the agency did pretty well. You know, we have a little more general fund. We're down a little bit in lottery, which is to be expected given the closures that have been there and some unpredictability in terms of what lottery revenues will be available. And we're up in terms of other funds and about flat in federal funds. That said, I think we talked about it a little bit. We thought there had been a lot of choices made back and forth to be able to keep those numbers flat. And that's exactly what happened. I think the governor had a set of priorities that she wanted to fund. And so there are places where ODA took cuts in core programs that we might not have expected to actually be cuts. We had some positions on lists, but we had them as vacancy savings, hoping to hold on to the positions and then hoping when the revenues came back around, we would be able to fill those positions. So let's click through that really quick and talk about it. So overall, there were 3 positions eliminated out of the food safety program. I think we had not anticipated that to happen. There were 2 positions completely eliminated out of the ag water quality program. Those were actual implementers. And then also a position out of the soil and water conservation district program was eliminated. There are a couple of, there's some additional vacancy savings in the ag water quality program, and then a fund shift in a position in natural resources that had been a split position between general funds and other funds. And that has been proposed to move all over onto other funds in the pesticide program. So we'll really have to look at that position and the work portfolio to make sure it matches up with the funding source overall. We also had the elimination of a position in the CAFO program. That was not a surprise to us, and it was on our list earlier. We had done some early movement of people. If you remember back when the state locked down and we were concerned that we were going to have budget crisis coming forward. After that, a couple other biggies for you. The budget proposes to eliminate ODA's office presence at the Food Innovation Center for our marketing staff. That's about a $250,000 savings. We are planning on those staff continuing to work remotely from their homes. We will continue our presence for the time being with our laboratories at the Food Innovation Center, although they are anticipated to move in the next couple of years to what will be called the North Valley Complex in Wilsonville, which will be a combination of several agencies, laboratory functions, and some other state functions as well. And then there is also the elimination of policy analysts in the marketing program, but an addition of $1 million for a grant program. This was suggested and added by the governor at the request of the Racial Justice Task Force. And this will be a grant program targeted to underserved producers. Then the governor's budget supports 4 new fee increases in the agency where we would propose to raise fees, that being in our food safety program, our brands program, our livestock feed program, as well as the addition of a new license type in our pesticide program, and that helps with the implementation of the school IPM program. Then on to packages that the agency had requested where we saw a really strong need in terms of workload and our ability to respond. The governor's budget includes a position to do emergency response. So emergency response coordinator, an agency equity officer to help us continue to improve our diversity, equity, inclusion within the agency, as well as serving Oregon agriculture. An internal auditor position, $225,000 for a baseline soil assessment, and then $430,000 to be used for domestic marketing efforts. And background for the domestic marketing package, most of the work that we have done in terms of our marketing program, general fund pays for the ODA marketing staff, but our activities are traditionally paid for through federal funds, market access funds that we access through WUSADA. And those are limited to international markets. And so we have not had a core pot of money to use for domestic marketing efforts. So we've talked about it more recently as meeting people where they're at and helping them grow to that next level. And that may mean growing within the boundaries of local markets here in Oregon, or that may mean moving into some of those larger domestic markets, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, with some of their products as those companies want to grow and expand. So we're really excited about the opportunity that this puts forth. Another area where, as things have developed over the last couple of months, we've had some more discussion as well for the domestic marketing money. There seems to be a great deal of interest, and it's growing in terms of cover crops in the Midwest. And so this would be a nice way to use some of this money to help promote some of our seed industry and how it could be used in that cover cropping, as well as that ties into some of the climate initiatives too that are out there. And there are several of the seed dealers that are really exploring that new opportunity right now and are excited about it. So I think it may have been Elin that asked about this, and this was the meat inspection program. And Alexis and I think we were both about half right around it when we tried to respond off of what we thought. But there is a continuation of the initial funding that came to the agency for the meat inspection program. That's about $900,000. It has a couple startup positions that are included in it, but it doesn't include money for like the big build out. And so we continue that initial part of it, and then there would have to be additional funds to do the larger build out around the marketing program. There were some additional positions that were continued for the hemp program. And then just a couple, I'm not going to go through all of these because there's a lot of bits and pieces of things. The Japanese beetle eradication program is fully funded in the governor's recommended budget, as well as the continuation of a position we received a couple of biennium ago for implementing the worker protection standards. There's funding to continue the water quality monitoring in the Klamath Basin. I think the other thing that I may not have mentioned, there was a fund shift in our noxious weed program that moved some of our noxious weed staff over onto other funds in the hemp program. We've done that voluntarily during 2020 to manage the cash on the lottery fund side, but the governor's recommended budget would continue that as well. So I'm going to stop there. That gets us through most of the list, and see if Alexis or Lauren have something they'd like to add.
I think the only thing I would add is kind of big picture. The governor, what really went into this session, or building into her budget for the session and the biennium, with three big priorities, one of which Lisa meant was investments recommended from the Racial Justice Council. The other two was recovery and response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and then also response for the unprecedented wildfires that we had seen last year.
Lauren, this is Stephanie. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, Lisa and Alexis both did a great job. The one thing I will mention to the board, I think we've talked about this before, and this affects primarily cash balances. We have been keeping track of our expenses related to COVID and have been able to get reimbursements through the CARES Act dollars. And so I don't have enough full accounting of that today. So that has helped with the tremendous amount of work we've done, particularly in our food safety, animal health programs particularly. And then secondly, there are still discussions statewide about ODA possibly receiving cannabis dollars. That is not in our budget today, but that would be for our work. And I use the word cannabis holistically. That's the marijuana programs through OLCC, and then what we do on the hemp side. So it's together. And part of that is to help with our laboratory infrastructure and then our various programs. So you may hear more rumblings about that, and as those discussions keep moving along statewide.
All right, thank you. Board members, now it's time for us to ask questions. I have a couple. I'll start with Lisa, on your the handout that was sent to us. I think you just said that there were 3 food safety positions eliminated. The handout says 2. To clarify that.
I can clarify that. There's one under it. It's an office manager for food safety.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I
Gotcha,
just
gotcha.
did it for you for brevity.
All right, thank you very much. And then on the ag water quality positions, there are 2 shown on here, but I thought I had seen an email or something earlier that said there were actually 3 positions.
There's one here that's held back for vacancy savings, but remember there's also the Soil and Water Conservation District program.
Okay. Okay. And then I'm just curious, I know that the facilitation work out in the Umatilla was not funded. Is there any hope for that or any alternative funding, or is that dead?
So I think, remember, this is early in terms of the process. This is what the governor's office, the governor put forward in her budget. There's always legislative discussions that can happen. And I think that the local community still has interest in that. So I would not be surprised to see it come back in some form during the session and be part of that longer discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other board members have questions for any ODA staff on the budget? I don't see anybody asking to speak, so I think we are good on that. Thank you, Lisa, very much. As usual, very detailed, professional, and to the point. Thank you. Okay, we have, let's see, we are a little early. Is Amy Gilroy, or Amy and Jeff ready to go on the farm to school funding presentation? You can light up your screens if you are. I do not see them yet. Oh, here we go.
And can we stop sharing the screen, Carla?
Oh, yeah, good question, or good point. Thank you. That makes it, when people who have bad eyes, like your chair, makes it a little easier to see. Okay, so we have Jeff.
Yep,
We have Amy.
I'm here. I haven't seen her. I was just supposed to meet her.
I haven't seen Amy. I can text her quick and see.
Okay, why don't you do that? I don't know, Jeff, if you want to start or if it's better to wait and see what's up with Amy.
I think it's better to wait, as I was supposed to come in all midway through and just give a perspective, and I think she's got some slides, and she's kind of in charge of the presentation.
Gotcha. Okay, well, if anybody needs to grab a cup of coffee, now might be a good time. There she is. Welcome, Amy. We'll give you a couple of minutes to get organized.
Hi there.
We're a little early. Sorry to spring it on you. So Amy and Carla, are you going to need to do some screen sharing for the presentation? Is that all good to go?
Yes, I'll share my screen again when Amy's ready to go through her slides.
Okay. So Amy, you can just let us know when you're ready to go and we'll start.
Okay, great. Is Jeff Akeley on?
He is.
Hi, Amy,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Trouble.
The miracles of modern technology.
I don't know if Amy heard me, but I'm here.
I don't know if she heard you either. She's gone again.
Give me a hug, kid. All right.
That's the good part of technology. I like the dogs and I like the kids and like everybody just kind of being people.
He got a fancy blanket for Christmas and he wears it around like a robe constantly. So
Okay, Amy, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm sorry about that. I'm having some connection problems. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So Carla, if you want to bring up my slides, I will, we can get going. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Director Taylor and members of the board. I'm going to give you an update on the Farm to School Producer Equipment and Infrastructure Grant today, and some of the changes to the program due to COVID-19. Joining me today will also be Jeff Akeley with Akeley Farms, who's on the call. And he's one of our new, he's one of our grantees under the new Farm to School Equipment and Infrastructure Grant. So he's going to share a little bit about his project today, which I think will be interesting for you all. And then we'll have some time for questions from you all as well. Next slide. So some of you may or may not recall that the Farm to School budget last session nearly quadrupled from 4.6 to $15 million, of which, you know, I think what's always important to remember about the way the Farm to School budget may increase or decrease. 80% of the funds are always dedicated for reimbursing schools or the other eligible sponsors when they make purchases of qualified Oregon product. So that's always been the rule of the law with the program. And so I think that's always something to keep in mind in terms of how it impacts our agricultural economy. Some of the changes that the bill brought with the expansion in funds were, again, more eligible entities or school food sponsors. So this was really the first biennium where child and adult care food programs, or CACFP programs is what they're called, were eligible. And those are places like Head Starts and early child care centers that are serving public meals. They became eligible to utilize these funds when they make purchases of Oregon products, as well as the summer meal sites, which again I think is a huge part of this program because of the variety and volume of Oregon products that are available during the summer months. It just seemed like it made a lot of sense to add the summer meal program. And so those sites also became eligible to opt into the program and buy Oregon products or be reimbursed for Oregon products. The bill also added 3 new grant programs, One was an additional competitive grant for schools that had innovative projects running with farmers or processors, a technical assistance grant for our regional farm to school hubs around the state and other farm to school practitioners. And then the third one, which is what we'll talk about today, is the Farm to School Producer Grant that ODA oversees, and that's a new program. And the purpose of that is to help producers scale their production to meet some of the product needs of schools. And the original budget for that grant program was $500,000 of the $15 million that was set aside, but that was later reduced due to the state budget cuts in response to the pandemic. Next slide. So, okay, so what are some of the types of projects that that the grant can be used for? So here are some of the types of scenarios that we envisioned producers and processors using this for. We wanted producers that were new to selling to schools, as well as those who have established markets with schools to be eligible for the grant program, especially if they're interested in scaling. Maybe they've been selling to a couple of schools in their region, but now they're ready to scale. They have experience. They have good business relationships with schools. Maybe they want to scale regionally. Maybe they even want to get into statewide distribution. So we really wanted producers to be equally eligible for the funds. We also wanted processors that were interested in increasing the use of Oregon products, raw agricultural ingredients in their products, to also be eligible, and growers themselves. Anyone that was raising crops or livestock in Oregon, we wanted them to be eligible for the funds. So the funding, has been used to purchase equipment such as bins and totes, cold storage projects, which you'll hear about.
Amy, we've lost your audio. I don't know if you can hear me or not. So I presume she's trying to reconnect. Are you there, Amy?
Today with Jeff's project, or infrastructure for those types of amenities, tractor implements, and processing equipment. Next slide.
Amy, I don't know if you can hear me, but we're having trouble with your audio. Carla, maybe you can text her.
You hear me? So Amy, you may want to just try calling in, because you're cutting in and out.
All right. I'm going to call in, and if maybe Jeff wants to go over his slides, we could try that.
Okay. Are we having any issues with me?
Not so far.
No, I don't have any slides. I was just brought in to talk about my experiences with the project. Is that okay if I do that?
That's absolutely okay.
So we were one of the 6 businesses awarded the project, and our project was basically to increase what we can do scaling wise. So we've sold to over 10 different school districts in 2018 and 19. And the problem that we were having was with our produce, it's very perishable. And so we needed a larger cold storage facility, and we needed a bigger one, a more efficient one that could get the produce down cooler faster. We would lose a lot of time with our old facility. It would take, if you harvest all day and you put several hundred pounds of produce in a cooler, it actually heats that cooler up, and it would take until 3 in the morning to get it down to temperature. So we needed a more efficient and a higher capacity cold storage unit, and this is where we're building it. We had to cut that 10 off of our shop, and we're going to kind of build it right into the shop. I guess I was supposed to talk about my experiences selling to schools, but like I said, we've sold to 10 different school districts, and we're looking to expand that, be more consistent with these school districts, because some of the school districts we would only sell because of supply a couple times a year, but we'd like to become more consistent and increase that to, I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but we're probably only hitting 10% of what we could sell to school districts if we had, if we were able to scale our business up. We sell all over the region. So we started out selling in Umatilla because it's a neighbor to us. And the way that worked out was our strawberries, for whatever reason that year, were 3 weeks early, and they were on before any of our normal farmers markets were on. So I don't know if you folks know Ricky Lynn Larson out of Umatilla. She's she manages the food program in Umatilla, and she was looking for ways to spend her grant money, and she found us on the side of the road selling strawberries. We had a stand set up, and that was what started getting us to selling to schools. Since then, we've expanded. We sell to obviously Umatilla, but then we go all the way out to Portland. We sell to the Beaverton School District, which is 50 different schools, and they have no central hub, so you have to deliver to each school individually. We deliver out to McMinnville, to LeGrand, but as many as we do, there's a huge demand for these strawberries, at least. And so we really needed a lot of help scaling up our business to meet that demand. And so that infrastructure grant's going to allow us to do that. We'll be able to get the fruit cooled faster. It'll have more shelf life for the schools, because the sooner you can get this the fruit down to 34 degrees, you save days of shelf life. So it's really going to help us scale our business up and be more efficient. I don't know what else I was supposed to talk about, but it's going this grant is going to be a huge boon to us, because obviously building a cold storage is an expensive project, and farming, the margins are thin and everything. So it's really going to help us go from selling from 8 to 10 schools to selling to we would like to sell to almost everywhere in the state. We talked about talking to Eugene school districts, and if that's quite a drive for us. It's a 6-hour drive. But if we can get this produce cooled down quickly, and then we'll be able to do it and deliver a good product to these schools. So I know I'm kind of rambling on right now, but there's a lot of benefits to this program for us, especially. I think it's going to get more than its money worth out of it for us.
Jeff, this is Stephanie, the board chair. I think
Yeah.
Amy may be on, but I do have a question for you. What role, if any, does ODA play in helping you make the connections to the schools you're going to sell to? How do you make those connections?
Well, Amy can attest to this. When we started selling to schools, there was no list out there of schools that are looking to buy. So I contacted Amy, and I pestered her it was several emails over maybe a month period or so. And I told her, hey, I need a list of schools that are looking to buy, and she provided that to me. And now I believe in some of their brochures or some of their information that they give out, there is a list of schools that are looking to buy from local producers. And so they've helped out quite a bit putting us in touch. And I believe that they do have some websites up where we're probably listed on there as able to deliver throughout the whole state. So they've been a big help with that too.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Amy, are you back on now? And we have about 10 minutes till the next agenda item. Are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, then we might put your presentation
Yes,
back.
I'm on.
Sorry
about that.
Carly, do you want to put the slides back up on screen share?
Also to speak to what Jeff was talking about in relationship to, how we work with producers interested in selling to schools.
Hey, Amy, you need to mute something because you've got an echo. I don't know whether you mute the laptop or I am not a technical person.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm having a lot of internet problems.
You're good.
So Jeff mentioned that, the way we support producers is we provide a lot of trainings to producers throughout the year on how to enter the school marketplace. We do that through, one-on-one technical assistance, introducing them to their school buyers in their region. We do have a vendor showcase that we host every year at the Oregon School Nutrition Association conference, which brings together about 300 of the school food staff from around the state. That's in Salem every year. And usually for that showcase, we provide, we have vendors show up with Oregon products, and, schools come to that showcase knowing that those are the products that they can purchase with the use of their funds. And so that's one of the ways too that I think a lot of producers and processors make connections with schools in the state. And then we're also investing in, and actually some of our specialty crop block grant funding in the state has been used to support the development of regional farm to school hubs. Realizing that Oregon is the biggest, most well-funded farm to school program in the country, that we need more help on the ground, helping producers and schools connect to one another. So we've been investing in establishing these regional hubs, and those hubs, they're not physical hubs, they're actual virtual hubs, but they provide a lot of gatherings and meetings and trainings for producers and school buyers as well. So I'll just mention too that we received 35 qualified applications for the grant, requesting more than $2.1 million. And so I think that's, there's a lot of there's evidence that this is a very important program and that it would be well utilized. Again, we were only able to meet about 10% of that demand. The program was cut to $250,000 due to the state budget cuts because of the pandemic. So, but we were able to fund 6 highly competitive projects that we're really pleased with, and those are listed there in the slide. And there, we were able to fund projects from all over the state that are focused on working with both urban and rural school districts. For example, Mama Tea Farms in Willamina had a really innovative project where they actually developed a crop plan with the school food service director with Willamina School District. And and you'll see the other ones listed there. So we had a variety of products, both in fresh form, as Jeff mentioned, he's going to be expanding his strawberry sales with schools, but also value-added center of the plate items, which are which Tortilleria La Tienda de Leon, which is a tamale maker. She makes a whole grain tamale, a few different recipes actually for the school breakfast and school lunch program, that she's starting to expand her sales across the state too. So for example, Umatilla, Jeff mentioned Ricky Lynn from Umatilla. She's been purchasing the tamales from Lucy, the owner of that food business, for some time. So they're also one of the awardees as well. Next slide. So I wanted to just briefly mention what some of the impact of COVID-19 has been on Farm to School. So the program was cut last year in the special session at the end of the year by about $5 million from the original $15 million. So that did reduce, the funding that schools had to purchase Oregon product, as well as the funds we had to distribute to producers as part of our infrastructure and equipment grant. Some of the impact of that too with the schools was that, school closures began in March, and the USDA authorized all schools to start their emergency summer meal program. So they all basically became grab and go meal sites. None of the congregation sites or cafeteria sites were running, and so schools were really looking for more grab and go meal service products, and so that really increased the demand for prepackaged and pre-portioned products that were already ready to heat and serve essentially at home, for those kids who might be at home during the day by themselves. Schools wound up canceling a lot of the guaranteed orders with some of the Oregon farm to school producers, and then again those funds were reduced to $250,000. And those are my slides, and then I was going to turn it over to Jeff to talk about his project and his expansion. I think he already maybe talked about his slides. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, Jeff did, Amy. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Amy or Jeff? Amy, I don't know if you heard, but I had asked Jeff one question when he was on about ODA's role in helping him get his products out, and I think he answered that very well, and I think your materials helped with a little bit more information as well. Anyone else have any questions? I don't see the screen lit up for anyone, so I will thank you both very much. And Carla, I don't remember whether or not those slides were provided to the board or if they're on the website, but we should make sure that they are.
I'll get them posted after the meeting here today.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So we have a panel discussion coming up for our next agenda item. And so I think what I'm going to do here, this is going to be interesting to see if I can pull this off. But to try and have some order, I'm going to read the panelists whom I know are here to speak to us today. This is the legislative priorities from various stakeholders. And then I'll make sure that I haven't missed anybody, and then we'll go in the order that I read this off, and I will say your name in case you forget the order. So I have Amy Wong from the Friends of Family Farmers, Peggy Lynch from the League of Women Voters of Oregon, Jan Lee, the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts, Jeff Stone, the Oregon Association of Nurseries, Tammy Denny from the Oregon Cattlemen's Association, Rocky Dallum from the Oregon Dairy Farmers Association, Morgan Gratz-Weiser of the Oregon Environmental Council, Samantha Bayer from the Oregon Farm Bureau, Courtney Moran from the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, Amanda Hoey from the Oregon Wheat Growers League, Jana McCamey from the Oregon Wine Growers Association, and Katie Murray from Oregonians for Food and Shelter. Those are the folks that I had confirmed to speak today. Did I miss anyone who would like to speak today? Okay, I think we're good. If I'm remembering correctly, Carla, does each have 3 minutes, 5 minutes? Remind me.
We have an hour for the presentation this morning, so we can go 4 minutes per person.
Okay, we'll, and everybody who is speaking, please, if you are able to put your picture up and unmute so we can see you, that's fabulous. And thanks to Jeff Stone for sending us a text of a new president for any who were wishing they were watching the inauguration instead of being at the board
I totally
meeting.
went and watched it. I left her meeting and watched it.
You're not supposed to confess that. Okay, we will start right in with Amy Wong, please, from Friends of Family Farmers.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me today. And I've never presented at the Board of Ag, so I hope that my presentation, brief as it is, will comport with your normal standards, and apologies if it doesn't. Friends of Family Farmers is a farmer-led nonprofit organization that has advocated on behalf of socially and environmentally responsible farmers and ranchers across Oregon for over 15 years. FOF works towards a regenerative and equitable system of agriculture that minimizes reliance on chemical inputs and creates resilient local food systems that prioritize nutrient-dense foods, something the pandemic has highlighted the importance of. Knowing that this legislative session is unprecedented in operational nature and is focused on COVID-19, wildfire recovery, racial equity, and the budget crisis, FOF isn't putting forth a lot of our own legislation, but supporting and amplifying work that aligns with our mission. That said, our main priority is the state meat inspection program because so many of our meat producers have been negatively impacted by Oregon's lack of processing capacity. We've been tracking this issue for many years and are especially supportive of HB 27H5, which aims to establish a $10 million grant fund for infrastructure and hopefully technical assistance for bringing existing and maybe new processing facilities up to standards compliance. FOF will also be advocating for other budget items related to the state meat inspection program. FOF is also a member of the Organic Stakeholders Work Group and supports the Oregon Organic Action Plan, which has dual bills in the Senate and the House. FOF is also tracking funding for the Double Up Food Bucks and Farm to School programs, as well as other hunger programming. FOF has been participating in advocacy work around the Oregon Climate Action Plan, stemming from Executive Order 2004, and will continue to do so through the legislative session. Lastly, there is a handful of land use bills that FOF will track, including expanded land use notice to leaseholders or tenants, as well as permanently allowing remote testimony. And I'll be honest and say that there's still a lot of additional bills that I need to review, so there'll likely be more. But for now, I'm going to leave it at that. And again, thank you so much for having me present what we'll be working on legislatively right now.
Thank you so much, Amy. And that was exactly the kind of thing that the board is interested in hearing. I think we'll hold questions till the end. And I just got a tip on the chat thing that there may be some trouble with internet connections for people. I guess there's a lot of heavy traffic, probably because of the inauguration. So hopefully we'll keep everybody together. Our next speaker is Peggy Lynch from the League of Women Voters, Oregon.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'm Peggy Lynch, League of Women Voters Natural Resources Coordinator for the Action Team. The League of Women Voters of Oregon is a 101-year-old grassroots, nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We envision Oregonians participating in a fully accessible, responsive, and transparent government for the common good across rural, urban, and party divides. We promote respectful civil discourse. The League advocates on policy issues and never supports nor opposes individual candidates or political parties. Our legislative action is always based on advocacy positions formed through studies and member consensus. There are 12 local leagues around the state and 3 smaller units. You can see on the backside of our 2021 priority sheet that I sent to Carla ahead of time that we have a number of volunteers following the breadth of issues about which the legislature addresses. We have focused much of our energy on the effects of climate change and what policies we should advocate to address this emergency. Who knows more than the people who work the land about the changes happening? Who knows more about our drought and water scarcity, about water quality, about wildfires, the changing harvest times and seasons, and new and increasingly damaging insects and invasive plants? Extreme weather events affect public health and damage infrastructure. We also know that the agricultural industry will need to use new techniques to help reduce greenhouse gases and to store carbon. That effort will take education by partners at this meeting, including partners such as the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, OSU Extension, and of course, the Department of Agricultural staff. We support resources for those efforts. The League looks forward to working with you and partners to address these issues. I have provided our broader list of priorities sent to Carla, but none is more important to address than ways to address our climate emergency. You may know that I try to follow many of the Natural Resource Agency budgets, since policy seldom happens without the money to address them. With the current services level budget shortfall for 2021, we will be looking to advocate for the most efficient ways to spend public dollars, but we may also advocate for some spending from the rainy day funds. If 2020 wasn't a rainstorm, what is? Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Peggy. And also it was suggested for people having connectivity issues that they might want to call in instead of using the internet. Okay, as I said, we'll hold questions till the end. So our next speaker is Jan Lee.
Good morning. Oregon Association of Conservation Districts, of course, represents our 45 soil and water districts in the state, local governments. Our number one item is funding, budgets. We will be following the natural resource budgets, including ODA and OWEB, to support the necessary programs that we all need to get our work accomplished. We're disappointed to see again that the natural resource budgets equal less than 2% of the state's general fund. If you look at the proposed legislation, 3,000 bills, now compared to 2,700 in 2019, there are many bills that just propose studies due to these fiscal concerns. Beyond funding, our number one issue is relative to working in natural lands protection and programs. As a member of the DEQ task force developing a rulemaking on the reduction of greenhouse gases called Cap and Reduce, among 33 other people, I should say. Our role there is to support voluntary programs. Programs such as sequestration for ag and timberlands. Those programs would be called alternative compliance instruments, which could go towards meeting our goal for greenhouse gases. The federal government in President Biden's Climate 21 program document also refers to these programs, a nationwide banking program from existing funds, and he addressed, or his staff addressed, that up to 20% of greenhouse gas reductions could occur from sequestration if the programs move forward. So we have asked NRCS to think about working with the administration to enable us to have a demo banking program here in Oregon. The governor has currently placed a new position in the OWEB budget that we hope will stay there. It's one that shares support for the water vision, which we need for future water protection, and for climate programs. We think OWEB would be a natural funder for some of the climate work that needs to be accomplished on ag and timberlands. So we will be supporting that. Another important area for us is groundwater management. House Bill 2018 promotes funding a position in cooperation with USGS to conduct a review looking at the levels and the consumption of groundwater around the state. House Bill 2257 related to groundwater provides for a hydrologist to work on issues in the Harney Basin, one of the areas where our soil and water district is working to try to support people as those levels drop. There's a multitude of fire-related bills, as there should be, to confront this major ongoing issue. Districts will be supporting these programs, and they need them to help landowners within their boundaries so they can work with partners to reduce fire potential and also restore damaged lands. As the rest of the group, we're tracking many, many bills, and we invite other organizations to share issues with us, and I'm always available to talk with any of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jan. Appreciate it. Okay, Jeff Stone from the Oregon Association of Nurseries is up next.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Jeff Stone. I serve as the executive director of the Oregon Association of Nurseries, your largest sector of agriculture. Now we just recrested the $1 billion mark, of which 80% of what we grow goes outside of the state. So we're proud of that moniker. A couple opening thoughts. We have a lot of my colleagues who will have specific issues, so I'm not going to hog up all the airtime, and so you have to hear repeated content. So I'll go a little bit different direction with your permission. First of all, I want to thank Director Taylor and Governor Brown for keeping us open. A year, a little less than a year ago, that was not certain. And so I want to thank Director Taylor for her advocacy for agriculture, and also Governor Brown, who I was not completely sold that just listing what was closed rather than what was open was the right choice. But I told the governor herself that she was 100% right on that, compared to what the other states and provinces were going through. During this pandemic, the nation rediscovered gardening. Some of it is because you're stuck at home and look at your yard and go, man, that's just, post-apocalyptic. It's awful. And so people would be able to go, and that happened all throughout the country. And so Oregon growers had a very guilty pleasure of having a really good year. And it doesn't matter what size you are, but by and large, we're very gratified that people have rediscovered gardening. You have in your packet my legislative agenda, both federal and state, and fast facts about the industry. A couple quick things. Pest and Disease Program is the one that we track probably the closest, and it is something that is a national model, and also one that ODA has that unique blend of being a regulator and an advocate. So I want to let you know that how important that is. And it's throughout the ODA during the pandemic. We gave an award this last December to Jonathan Sandow from ODA. He worked his tail off to help the agricultural community get resources, to understand the resources, to take panic calls from executive directors that were getting flooded with calls about what they can get and where they can get it. So I just wanted you to know that we honored him with the Friend of Nurseries Award, and he was very deserving. And so I wouldn't want this board meeting to pass without that recognition. A couple quick things. Cumulative impact of regulations, we need to keep an eye on that. And I would have you as a board look at just not only what's happening within the agricultural community in terms of fees and taxes and all those type of things, but where it impacts in other areas. So, there's one checkbook. And it depends on, I just want you to keep that in mind as we talk about resolutions and all that, about what the cumulative impact is. There will be others who will talk about the climate. I'm on that bill. I'm on part of that special 35-person Rules Advisory Committee. So we'll let others talk about that. But one thing I want to talk about is the President Biden, and it's now President Biden, is going to introduce an immigration package. I cannot tell you that this is the time, this is the place for us to do it. And I've asked my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues to put aside whose bill it is and talk about the elements. One of your board members, Josh Shalinsky, had that moment of clarity when we were talking with the House Judiciary writers. He goes, I don't care whose bill it is. How about if we do these things? That's exactly how you pass a bill like this. So you have a warrior amongst you, and so plus I have to suck up to him. He's a past president. And here's the last thing: vaccines. There's a lot of unknowns about how and when the farm workers will get vaccines. I think we can do better in terms of making it very clear. I mean, painfully clear, repetitive clear. About how this happens. And so there are going to be, I've invited a few executives from the other ag and forestry community to meet with the governor's office, the vaccines czar, Connie Seeley, to talk about how do we do this? How do we talk to our members? I can't tell you enough, even though I'm, 57 and, weighted with a whole bunch of maladies. I would rather give up my shot to the farm worker. So I know up at the end, it's like a 46-minute soliloquy. So I give you back your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for your thoughts. Our next speaker is Tammy Denny with the Oregon Cattlemen's Association. And I would remind others who aren't speaking to put their mics on mute. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. It's my privilege and pleasure to join you today. I am the new executive director of the Oregon Cattlemen's Association. I have been on the job a total of 3 months, so I am reminded daily that I know very little, and I am humbled daily by my lack of knowledge. So I have a steep learning curve in this arena with this robust industry where we enjoy cattle in every one of Oregon's 36 counties. So we are spread across the entire state with thousands of ranchers who are working every day and who have continued to work every day throughout the pandemic to make certain that, to the best of their ability, the consumers had fresh beef available to them for their purchase at a place of their choosing. We're absolutely embracing and looking forward to the conversations around this expansion of meat processing, and that was addressed earlier, but that is one of a priority for us. You have in front of you our legislative priority one-pager. I won't belabor any of those points, but for some of you who have served on the Board of Ag for more than one term now, some of these topics are repetitive for you and you're not going to be at all surprised. And one of those is predator management. So funding the predator management program is in everyone's best interest, and we'll continue to pursue that conversation throughout the legislative session. Water quality, of course, and water quantity. Water is one of the key topics that we're engaging in and preparing for as this legislative session kicks off. Every ag and natural resource industry is paying close attention to these conversations, and this will be a topic that I know you will be paying attention to as well at the Board of Ag. So I just want to reiterate how important it is for all of us to be working collaboratively. Never before has there been a time when we've been forced into a screen-based relationship rather than being able to come into a meeting room and see each other's body language directly. We're looking at screens, we're looking at little blocks with names on them versus seeing people's faces and their body language. So we for almost a year now have been working from this vantage point and missing each other's company and missing the dialogue of just gathering and determining, where can we align and where do we need to agree to disagree. So I know we're all anxious and looking forward to the time when we can come back together again. One of the issues that is a bit of a concern for our industry as we look at this session and the wide disparate array of bills, more than 1,800 now with another 1,000 coming our way by the end of the week, are the fee bills. And Department of Ag put forward some fee bills, food safety and the branding program. And as our industry is discussing these fee bills, we had a in-depth conversation last week, and one of the conversation points was there really is a benefit to the public that these programs be fully funded, and perhaps it's past time for us to have a conversation about general fund. It is in the public's best interest for us to be able to quickly identify an animal that might need to be quarantined. Branding program is a state of the art. It's one of the best in the country, and our producers are now saying they feel like they're at their breaking point when it comes to taking on additional fees, even though they want the program. They're very much struggling. So we're continuing that conversation, and we appreciate desperately and sincerely the relationship that this industry has with the Department of Agriculture, with your staff. Never before has it been more important for us to fund the Department of Ag, because we need you. We need your people to help us do our job. We also need to fully fund our Oregon State University scientific community, because we need those scientists, the brightest and the best, to want to come and be on campus with Oregon State University, and we need the brightest and best to help inform our practice so that we can be engaged in these conversations around climate, around carbon reduction, around wildfire management, and how the cattle industry fits into that and helps the environment and continues to provide the elements of environmental benefit. So we have a lot in front of us as we embrace this session. There is so much for us to do and such a steep hill in front of us, but when we're all working together, we can get this accomplished. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you as we embark on this session. And thank you very much for this opportunity today as a novice in this position to just say hello and say thank you for the work that you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Tammy, and congratulations on your new position. Our next speaker is Rocky Dallum from the Oregon Dairy Farmers Association.
Hi, and thank you. Rocky Dallum, I'm here today representing the Oregon Dairy Farmers Association. Many of you know I also work with Oregonians for Food and Shelter and the Cattlemen's Association, so thanks Tammy Denny for talking a little bit about what OCA will be working on. First of all, I just want to talk a little bit about ODFA. I think many of you know about the Dairy Farmers Association and the importance of dairy within Oregon as a not just an agricultural commodity, but as many of the brands we all know and love and our kids and our families rely on. And ODFA works very closely with the Department of Ag and the Board of Ag on a number of fronts, and some of them already been mentioned, whether that's promotion of our products, permitting, regulation, fees, all things that I think we've already seen will be discussions in the Capitol over the coming months, or virtually from the Capitol in the coming months, as we all kind of navigate uncharted waters in kind of a legislative environment. And look forward to having conversations with many of you. And look forward to I think the Board of Ag and the department to continue to advocate as they do. I think Jeff captured it well, an agency that both has a regulatory component, but also an advocacy component, which is, promoting our products. And I think telling the story of producers and what they do, whether it's in the conservation realm, the product development realm, and getting getting dairy products out to market. And our membership is a coalition of both traditional and organic growers. So a lot of these issues that you are all talking about are issues that our folks care about in a number of ways. So we're the same boat. I think we've spent a lot of time, including last night, Tammy Kerr and I just kicking around bills and trying to understand, what they mean, what their priority level is, not just from an organization, but from legislators. I think we're all, struggling right now to know, amongst the 1,800 bills, and probably another 1,500 more that are coming between the beginning of March, those that are going to be able to have serious airtime and those that probably will be left behind as we move forward. To list the things that I think that our producers are going to be most engaged in and most interested or concerned about. First of all, agricultural workforce. I think there's a conversation, we all know there's a conversation coming around overtime, there's some air quality, and really want to be able to have the chance to work and talk with all of you about the things that our producers, and I think all of the ag partners here around the table, do with their workforces, and what that means, both for workers and for our economy in general. And I think that we have a really good story to tell, and should be really cautious about some of the proposals. Secondly, I mentioned regulation from the Department of Agriculture. I think we all know that in the past, ODA has done a magnificent job in some really challenging situations to use their regulatory authority in the permitting process where folks have not fallen in line. But we're circumspect about proposals that would limit the expansion or the creation of new dairy operations, particularly those who are ready and willing to follow the current law and be good stewards of the environment. So we know that once again, there's several bills around industrial dairies and limitations on how dairies operate, and happy to talk with folks about what we think the department's done in the past and why those are concerning. And then already touched on by at least the nurseries and the cattlemen, and I'm sure Farm Bureau and others to come. But wetlands, water, both water quantity and water quality, a number of wildlife bills that I think as an ag coalition, folks are going to figure out, how we communicate on some of these issues, whether that's wildlife management, landowner options for dealing with deer, and those have different levels of interest to different members depending on where they are in the state. And so we'll be engaged in those conversations as well. And then animal health, again, like I say, I think our producers have a good story to tell about their stewardship of their animals, of their herds, and of the cows that they grow and use to produce milk. And so if folks have questions or concerns or proposals on that front, we'll be working with legislators there. And then, of course, budget. And I think Peggy talked a little bit about budget and said, 2020 certainly was a rainstorm. I think we're grateful that the budget environment is at least, while dynamic, not as dire as maybe we all thought it was going to be 7 or 8 months ago. But we certainly share the concerns that the natural resource agencies always are sort of the bottom of the bucket, so to speak, when it comes to general fund. Mentioned water in particular, storage, transfers. Our water infrastructure in the state is a critical need. And hopefully we can get more partners to start talking with legislators about how we can put those needs in the forefront. Oregonians, I think, care dearly about water, and if they don't, they should. And while schools are important to all of us and our kids, water is literally the most important thing. I think it's time that we have a conversation about general fund dollars going to some of these natural resource agencies. And on the other side of that coin, continuing the conversations with the department and some other agencies about fee increases. It's been a very difficult year on producers, both from wildfire and COVID. But this is a really challenging time, considering we've got a lot of producers who are playing catch up on a new commercial activities tax, new labor requirements over the last 4 or 5 years, some new environmental regulations that the fee structure. I think we have to have serious conversations about several of our agency fee increases and what that means for producers and how they can continue to thrive. And I think a theme you'll hear from other ag groups, and you've already heard today, is in commodity industries, our producers are all price takers, not price makers. And so the price of milk is the price of milk, and that doesn't change, but the costs that are imposed by the state do. And those are dollars that end up not flowing to our local economies, whether it's in the valley, on the coast, in Eastern Oregon, where we've got dairies all throughout the state, Southern Oregon. Money that our producers don't have in their pockets don't end up being spent in restaurants or put in workers' paychecks around the state. And I think that's the way for us all to look at economic and recovery and prosperity as we move forward. So I see Tammy there, but look forward to working with folks. Appreciate the Board of Ag and your your oversight and advice to the agency over these issues. But we have a lot of serious conversations that we hope that you'll engage us in and continue to partner with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Rocky, very much. Our next speaker is Morgan Gratz-Weiser, and forgive me if I've mispronounced your name, from the Oregon Environmental Council.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. I am Morgan Gratz-Weiser, so great pronunciation there. I'm the Legislative Director for Oregon Environmental Council. Thank you for having me here today. OEC is a nonpartisan, multi-issue, nonprofit policy advocacy organization covering topics of climate, air quality, transportation, and water quality and quantity. Related to ODA, this session we are supporting a range of policies, including first, the recapitalizing of the low-income septic repair loan program that is operated by Craft 3. We've been supporting that program for a number of years and will continue that support. We are supporting a suite of bills related to expanding access and investment in broadband internet access and infrastructure across the state. And also there is an ongoing discussion around water use measurement and reporting. We are hoping to settle on a policy that allows the state to better measure and create a water budget for each basin so as to provide more accurate and transparent data for managing the state's water and target investments in efficiency and resiliency into the future. We are also following the implementation of the governor's executive order on climate, including work related to agriculture and land use. We are supportive of funding to set up the funding that is set aside for the mapping of soils and health, and through that identifying opportunities for sequestration and opportunities for improving soil health, increase productivity, and going down there, to increase productivity and reduce dependence on chemicals. We also always engage in supporting programs through the budgeting process and recognize that all services provided by ODA are important, but I will highlight a few that we are specifically concerned about. We are certainly concerned about eliminating 2 food safety management positions, knowing that these are essential services that are delivered through this program that support large and small businesses and many startup businesses. We are concerned about eliminating the CAFO position as well as 2 ag water quality positions. And we are concerned about reduction in support for water quality monitoring. As we say, we can't manage what we don't measure, and water quality is an essential part of protecting public health and public resources. Some of the policy packages, the budget pops per se that we are supporting is number 370 for baseline soil health assessment. That is related to supporting that climate change EO, as I mentioned above. Number 140 for an internal auditor. Auditing can be very helpful for the agency to identify policy, programmatic, organizational, and personnel needs, and are often very useful in explaining agency services, outcomes, and programmatic deliverables. We are very supportive of number 320 for worker protection, for education, trainings, and technical assistance for employers and employees to help protect health and safety. We are very supportive of number 360 regarding Klamath water quality improvements, number 390 in support of the CAFO program, and number 450 to continue accepting federal dollars and support the 5 limited duration positions to implement the Food Safety Modernization Act. Related to fee increases, we will support all of them as these services that are provided are essential. However, we will continue to say that we don't support cuts such that these fees are simply backfilling existing budget areas. Again, we do support all of ODA's programs, and where we can assist, we hope the department will reach out to us so that we can support during the legislative session. That is a brief overview, and thank you for the time today. I'm always happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Okay, Samantha Bayer from the Oregon Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'm Samantha Bayer, Policy Counsel for the Oregon Farm Bureau. OFB is Oregon's largest agricultural trade association, representing nearly 7,000 farm and ranch families from across the state. This session, we are tracking over 400 bills that could impact agriculture, but I'm going to try and summarize the bills with the greatest potential for impact to our members for you all as quickly as I possibly can. So first, wildfire mitigation, suppression, and recovery will remain one of the most dynamic issues for OFB. We will be opposed to the creation of new statewide wildfire risk maps, changes to our longstanding model for fire funding, but we'll be working on positive changes to the structure for rural fire protection. OFB will remain actively engaged in wildfire response work and advocate for responsible and regionally specific wildfire management policy in our state. In the same vein, after a year filled with executive orders around cap and trade, COVID-19 response, historic wildfires, and drought, OFB will continue to advocate for the protection of private property from government takings to ensure limited and judicious use of executive authority, and to ensure that the state honors a transparent and open public process even in times of emergency. As Rocky mentioned, labor issues will again be prominent this legislative session with a specific focus on agricultural employers. OFB will be actively opposing overtime for agricultural employees, giving third parties the right to sue on behalf of all employees, and COVID-19 workers' compensation presumption. We will also be working with legislators to find workable solutions for wildfire smoke exposure for ag workers and increasing opportunities for safe housing and shelter for ag workers in the state. Switching gears to natural resource issues, with an entire committee devoted to water issues in the House, discussions will focus around the measurement and reporting of water use, regionalization of water, and limitations to the stock water exemption. OFB will fight to protect farmers' access to use their water rights, protect farmers from increased costs, and reduce litigation risk. OFB will also fight against bills that tax diesel fuels, create barriers to using pesticides lawfully, and those that attack animal agriculture in Oregon. Moreover, we will continue to oppose bills that will increase the cost of power for our membership, and will continue to fight cap and reduce program at both the administrative level and in the courts. Switching to land use, as Oregon grapples with competing needs for businesses, housing, and open space, OFB will continue to strongly advocate this session for the protection of agricultural lands under Land Use Planning Goal 3, while also understanding a need for flexibility and supporting the needs of our rural communities, especially those that will need to rebuild and recover from this year's devastating wildfires. Finally, there are also a number of bills impacting both wildlife management and hunting and fishing. 2021, we will see proposals to change the classification of beavers in the state, reduce predator management opportunities, and increase funding for conservation-related activities. It will be OFB's priority to oppose changes to wildlife management that will impact agricultural producers' ability to farm and ranch their land. With that, I will close. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you moving through the session. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can cede my time to my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Samantha. And hopefully we will be able to do questions at the end, assuming we still have our panelists with us at that time. The next speaker is Courtney Moran from the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, fantastic. So as you just introduced myself, I am Courtney Moran. I am the president and lobbyist for the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. And I just want to say thank you very much for having me here today and giving us the opportunity to present our legislative goals for the 2021 session. OHFA is an Oregon nonprofit comprised of Oregon hemp growers and handlers and related agribusinesses, and we advocate for forward-thinking pro-hemp legislation and regulations. Since our formation in 2015, we have passed 3 bills to date: House Bill 4060 in 2016, which at that time was one of the most comprehensive pieces of hemp legislation in the country, Senate Bill 1015 in 2017, and House Bill 4089 in 2018. Through these pieces of legislation and the rules that were implemented by the department, Oregon has become a national leader in not only hemp production, but in hemp policy. With the support from the department, as well as from our legislature and our overall congressional delegation, Oregon has really made a mark in the national industrial hemp industry and has really helped advance a lot of policy, not only within the state of Oregon itself, but nationally as well. OHFA has worked very closely with ODA since even before our formation, starting way back in 2013, and we are very grateful for your support for the Oregon Hemp Program. Everyone in the director's office has been incredible, and Sunny Summers, you have been an amazing ally, not only for Oregon hemp, but for the national hemp industry and policy development. And I'm extremely grateful to have you on our side, so thank you very, very much. Since 2018, OHFA has been advancing 2 bill concepts: a state program bill, which will bring the Oregon hemp pilot program that was authorized under the 2014 Farm Bill into compliance with the 2018 Farm Bill, which fully federally legalized commercial hemp production. We've also been advancing a hemp commission bill, which would create the establishment for a hemp commission. Now, these bills were tried in 2019 and in 2020, but due to the walkouts and the short end to both sessions, we were not able to get them passed through both chambers. So this 2021 session, we are moving these policy and commission bill forward again. So the state plan or state program bill is House Bill 2281. This bill carries the language forward from House Bill 4072 in 2020. We do have amendments that we have submitted, and they are in drafting, that will bring in concepts that we negotiated on in 2019. The language in House Bill 2281 and the amendments that will soon be posted was coordinated and collaborated on directly with multiple folks at ODA, with OLCC, with the Association of Oregon Counties, with law enforcement, with Oregon Farm Bureau, and also with OSU. And as I mentioned earlier, House Bill 2281 will bring the Oregon program into compliance with the 2018 Farm Bill language, as well as the USDA final rules that were actually published yesterday. So the bill will, in general, broaden ODA rulemaking authority over the program and over registration or license authority. It will establish the authority for the department to conduct criminal records checks as required by the 2018 Farm Bill. It will update the definition for hemp and change from using the term industrial hemp to hemp. It will also provide additional protections for our farmers and processors and those throughout the value chain. The hemp program is funded by registration fees and is self-funded. And as was done in House Bill 4072 last session, the department will be requesting authorization for use of other funds that have already been received to implement the program. Now, the other bill that we have moving forward for 2021 is House Bill 2284, and that is the Hemp Commission bill. This bill was collaborated on directly with Chris Anderson, with the Commodity Commission Department at Department of Agriculture. It is a combination of the statutory authority for the general commissions, for the Wheat Commission, and for the Beef Council. And we took all of those different statutory authority and merged them together into what would be basically an ideal type formation for a commission with modifications specifically for hemp. This language was also collaborated directly with Oregon Farm Bureau and with Oregon State University. Upon establishment, the Hemp Commodity Commission would join the 22 other commodity commissions. Now, both of these bills, House Bill 2281 and 2284, have been originally sponsored for this session by the House Committee on Agriculture and Land Use. However, because as we've learned in the last couple weeks that there are no committee bills this session, Chair Clem is our chief sponsor, but we are seeking additional sponsors. We have had numerous meetings with the members of the committee, and we do have support from the committee as well as directly from Chair Witt. And we are confident that this is our year to finally get these bills across the finish line. So thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Let's see here. We have 3 more speakers. Thank you, Courtney. The next speaker is Amanda Hoey from the Oregon Wheat Growers League. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
You did, thank you. Yes, good morning, Chair Halleck and members of the board. I am Amanda Hoey. I'm the CEO for the Oregon Wheat Growers League. And I joined the league last year about this time in January of 2020 to represent our wheat producers in the really complex landscape of issues that are impacting our farmers. And those issues quickly became even more complex as we dealt with the adaptations that were necessary to ensure the stability of our wheat supply during COVID-19. And while we don't have the time today to review through all of our priorities in what will be the wide-reaching session, including the labor, fees, and other topics that my colleagues so nicely highlighted, I will touch on a couple of areas that we've not yet fully noted. Research investment, market access, and crop protection. So first, investment to research. Despite the modifications that were required and some extensive drought conditions that we experienced throughout much of the year, we really had an outstanding quality in our 2020 crop, and that's not an accident. Our research has been fundamental to the ability of our producers to maintain their long-term viability and adapt to local environments. And we consider both the research and extension funding to be part of the basic infrastructure that's needed to sustain our industry and remain competitive in our global markets. So it takes years of sustained efforts, for instance, to develop and test new wheat varieties that are higher yielding, more drought tolerant, use a fertilizer more efficiently, and are more resistant to pests and diseases. But that's only if our efforts are consistent and sustained. So we invest our own dollars to this work, but require both federal and state investments to this shared public benefit as well. So those budgets, the impact to our research priorities will certainly be a focus. And the return on this research directly impacts the wheat that is produced in Oregon. So in 2020, that production equated to more than 46 million bushels of wheat produced across about 740,000 planted acres. And the majority of that wheat is exported, about 85 to 90% exported. So that brings me to the next priority, which is in relation to market access. And through all of our legislative priorities, we do seek to retain and expand that access. And I'll repeat the thank you on the efforts to keep the agricultural industry open. And as we remain open for that essential service and look at our markets, we really cannot lose sight that even as the state seeks to further develop domestic and niche markets, that we also need to continue to cultivate our export relationships for those core commodities. And as part of that effort, the need to invest in sustaining our cost-competitive transportation infrastructure floats to the top. We have multiple transportation modes to get our wheat to market most cost competitively and in the most environmentally friendly manner, but we have to prioritize investments to that infrastructure, and we advocate particularly to ensure smooth operations for navigation along the Columbia River. And finally, for us to have a product to bring to market, we look at the aspects surrounding crop protection, from access to pesticides and herbicides to the ability to protect our lands from wildfire. And on the access to our crop protection tools, our producers really require a wide range and variety of those tools due to the unique cropping systems that are found across the really diverse wheat production areas of the state. And further, our conservation and sustainability efforts require the continued access to approved pesticides. So we support the efforts to enhance those tools to best manage our crop. And in relation to the protection of the land itself, fire is a constant and annual threat to our wheat producers, causing extensive damage to crops, farm equipment, and livelihoods. And it's one that we've personally experienced on our family farm through the devastating fires in 2018, and one that our producers must manage annually. And in addition to protecting the ability of our farmers and their employees to conduct fire prevention, suppression, and control efforts on agricultural and rangelands, the League is an advocate for changes that allow the most extensive voluntary partnership between landowners and state resources to conduct that work. So I thank you for the time today, and as we prepare to embark on this 2021 session, I look forward to continued conversations with you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for your time. And our next speaker is Jana McCamey from the Oregon Wine Growers Association. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I wanted to echo some of the other comments about thanking Alexis and the excellent staff at ODA. It's a real pleasure to work with them. I also wanted to note Elin Miller on your board. Elin is a member of our association and a member of our industry, and we're very pleased to see her giving service to this board. So that's really positive. I don't want to repeat everything that's been said today, but do want to touch on a few points for our industry. It has been, well, 2020 was a very difficult year for our industry with the dual crises of COVID and the wildfires, which had very deep impacts on our industry. It was a year of pivoting and adapting and pivoting and adapting again as our vineyards and wineries responded to the closures, to new rules and regulations that came out as we navigated the COVID crisis. And I think that folks have done a good job in our industry seeking other sales opportunities and avenues, but there is a lot of hurt out there still. This was exacerbated in the fall at a critical time for our industry during harvest when the wildfire smoke affected many parts of our wine growing community. In particular, the Willamette Valley, which hadn't seen smoke impacts like this ever. Our friends in Southern Oregon have had to navigate smoke issues for many years, I believe 7 of the last 8 vintages, but it was a new experience in the Willamette Valley. And we've seen devastating impacts on many growers who saw their wine grapes either rejected due to quality concerns, or they've had to extend terms while wine is made, but then later on, as wine quality is assessed, it's not a guarantee that those wines will be sold. So it's certainly a tough time for our growers and the ripple effects, because we are value-added agriculture. So we have the farm gate value of our grapes, but we also have the wine in the bottle that gets sold to consumers. So all of those revenues and the tie-ins with the tourism community. So it's certainly been a tough situation. At the federal level, we are working hard to see funds put into the Wildfire and Hurricane Indemnity Program, WIP+, which could ease some of the burden for those growers who were impacted this last year. There is a tie-in with being required to purchase crop insurance for a few years, and our industry has a lot of concerns about how crop insurance works for high value wine grapes. The actuarial values are not sufficient to make up those losses. There are other issues with how that product is designed for wine grape growers. And so we're working to try to make changes along with our counterparts in California and Washington, so that's more of a safety net for folks moving forward. I also want to note on the research front that we were able to secure $3.5 million from Congress for smoke impact research. This builds on $2 million that we secured along with our California and Washington wine grower friends the last appropriations cycle, and that funding flows through USDA Ag Research Service and funds researchers at Oregon State University, UC Davis, and Washington State University. So we are in need of a lot of research funding to look at how these different smoke markers impact wine quality and what mitigation steps can be taken in the vineyard and in the winery. We also have issues of relations between growers and wineries and how to navigate the impacts that smoke and wildfire incidents can have on those critical relationships. So we're hoping that 2021 will be a less wild year, but that remains to be seen. In terms of the legislative session, there will be discussions around wildfire relief, and we are talking with Oregon State University about their lab testing capacity and how they might help meet industry needs in the future. OSU was able to pivot and help do testing, which has to happen very quickly in order for wineries to make assessments about about wine grape quality during smoke events. So we are talking with Oregon State about funding for that. We are also pushing a bill which would provide more sales opportunities for Oregon wineries. Currently, wineries can ship 2 cases of wine per customer in Oregon, and we're trying to raise that up to 5 to allow for those wineries that have pivoted to more online sales to meet the needs of their consumers. We had learned about ODA's legislative concept around allowing limited specialized exams for pesticide applicator licensing, and that is something that we are interested in. Wineries have to seek a commercial applicator license if they are purchasing grapes off of their property. And oh, thanks, Jeff. They're trying, and so for the use of sulfur dioxide in the winery setting for fumigating bottles and barrels and corks, excuse me. So we would be interested and supportive of ODA's effort to create the ability to have specialized exams for certain purposes, such as sulfur dioxide applications.
Jana, if you could wrap up, please.
Oh, sure, what was that?
If you could wrap up your time, please.
Yes. Just about there. We are also wanting to continue our work around herbicide drift, education and communication. ODA has been an excellent partner in this regard, and that remains a key priority for our industry. I don't want to repeat what others have said, but we share concerns around water, vaccines for ag workers, and conversations around overtime. So we look forward to continuing the good cooperation with ODA and with our ag stakeholder partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our final speaker is Katie Murray with Oregonians for Food and Shelter.
Hello, thank you, Chair and members of the board. So I'm joining some of the other new faces. I just started last month as Executive Director for Oregonians for Food and Shelter. We are a broad nonprofit coalition with a very diverse membership ranging from individual farmers and foresters to food processors, agricultural commissions, timber and wood products industries, chemical companies, professional applicators. So this organization is really focused on increasing the understanding of and advocacy for the safe and responsible use of tools and technologies to support crop protection, pesticides, fertilizers, biotech. Those are the kind of main areas that we're working on. So legislatively, our priorities are really going to center around those topics and ensuring access to the tools and technologies that growers and other land managers really need. You know, economic viability, market access, I think these things have been touched on by other people. I think our goal is really to ensure that the conversations that happen relate really strongly to the science and the data that we have available. I would say that we really appreciate our collaborations with ODA in the past and you know, hope to continue to be able to have discussions and provide resources and information as needed. I think one of the things that we wanted to bring in was just in terms of legislative discussions and even rulemakings around pesticides or biotech, we'd really like to make sure that these conversations are that what's included in these conversations include detailed usage data from impacted industries, as well as detailed economic impact analyses. So sometimes this is lacking, and it doesn't really lead to a transparent discussion about the impacts to industries of regulatory and legislative decisions. So that is one area that we would really like to focus on. We're also working proactively to try to address some of the anticipated economic impacts from recent rulemakings on chlorpyrifos. So we'll be looking at how to appropriate some funds for research into alternatives so that we can help those impacted industries find alternative products. So this is just a short summary. I'll leave some time for questions since I'm last, but Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who took time to come today. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. It's a busy time. It's the inauguration day, and it was a lot of really good information. I'm open it now for just a few minutes of questions. It's probably a lot for board members to process, so they may come back to you at another time. But if anything is on anybody's mind at the moment, now's the time. We'll just take a couple minutes here before the public comment period. So any questions from any board members for anyone?
Chairman Halleck, Elin here.
Yes.
Yeah, just real quick, and I think Jeff had touched on this as far as vaccination with farm workers. And I know we from wine industry hat I wear felt pretty strongly too. And could Director Taylor just give us kind of an update on what that is? And if we don't have time now, maybe we could do it back at a later time. But
I'm sorry, Elin, part of yours cut out on my an update on what?
On vaccinations for farm workers.
So why don't we see if there are other questions, and I can do that maybe at the very end of the meeting, but I'm happy. I meant to do that in my my director's update and forgot, so apologies. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for anybody at this point? Josh, are you lit up?
Yes, I just wanted to thank all of you for taking the time, and this was a weird way to meet you, but it's nice to meet some of you, and thank you for providing your legislative agenda. It's interesting to see what items are a priority, you know, even though we're all sort of related to ag and the environment and whatnot. I found this very informative. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Any other comments or questions? And I would just echo Josh saying that you all, whether you're new or you've been in your positions for a while, you all did a really good job of synthesizing a lot of information into a short period of time, and we appreciate that. Director Taylor, do you want to respond to the question that Elin raised?
Yeah, absolutely. So the state, as many of you may know, has a vaccine advisory committee that OH has been working with OHA to really try to prioritize various populations for vaccine rollout. And farm workers, kind of, so I would say the essential workers bucket where food and ag fit is expected to be in that phase 1B category. So phase 1A is the frontline workers, healthcare workers, those folks. There's about 350, 400,000 Oregonians who initially fit into that bucket. And I will say, there's been some confusion at the federal level on vaccine distribution initially with how they were distributing. Then they said they were going to push all their stockpiles out to states. So then states started re-looking at the phases and reprioritizing. And then we found out that, in fact, that was not the case. There wasn't a stockpile, and everything that we had was all we're going to get. So I think there's been the past 2 weeks just a lot of confusion. I expect that food and ag will continue to be in that kind of phase 1B category, but that category, as I understand it, represents about 40% of all Oregonians. And so it's pretty massive. And so they're gonna have to do some prioritization within that. With some of the changes, and the CDC then has also changed how they're recommending people get prioritized. They're recommending seniors be prioritized. And so, you know, and the governor has prioritized getting teachers vaccinated so kids can get back into school. So I think there's some moving pieces on exactly where food and ag is going to fit. It is something the vaccine committee is discussing. It is something they are very aware of, and it's something that we at ODA are talking with the Oregon Health Authority about pretty regularly. There are going to be some unique challenges around food and ag as I think about going into the spring with harvest with our migrant and seasonal farm worker community. There are going to be people coming in from South and Central America under the H-2A program, people coming up from California, and just making sure how do we, if they start the vaccine in one of those places, how are we tracking that? How do we know to what vaccine they got at 3 weeks interval that they have to get the second one here in Oregon. So there's some unique challenges we're also working through as a state, but it is very much, I think, on our radar. And I think we would have probably a bit of a more concrete idea of where we were for food and ag if there hadn't been some confusion over the past 2 weeks, which I think kind of turned some of this upside down, and we're still trying to figure it out.
Okay, thank you, Director Taylor. I think in of time, we are at the time I will our speakers again. And Carla, the last I had heard was that we did not have anyone give verbal public comment. Has that changed?
No, that's not changed, but you may want to note the written comments that we did.
Yes, I will do that. Yes, just briefly, we got 20, and you should have received all this in your packets. We had 20 written comments, and they're posted on the website and were sent out. Half of those written comments pertain to Resolution 298, which is the coexistence of wolves and livestock. The two work groups met last evening to review all of the resolutions under review and the comments received on those resolutions. The board will discuss these resolutions and work group recommendations during agenda item 8, which is scheduled for 11:30. And I would just like to personally express appreciation for the interest that is being expressed by the public in the board's resolutions as policy statements. Since I've been on the board, we have worked very hard to spend time on our resolutions to make sure the public is aware of them. We created a policy and process for commenting on those resolutions, for regular review of those and updating of those resolutions. And I am personally gratified to see that that seems to have spurred interest in the public in reviewing the policy statements of the board and commenting on them. So I wanted to say that because it was something that I care a lot about, and I'm glad to see it. So what I would like to propose, Carla, if we could move the next presentation to 10:50, I would propose that we take a break till 10:50 because I need to. And hearing no objections, we'll be back at 10:50. Thanks.
Sure. Emily's ready to go, so we should be ready to go at 10:50.
Okay, I think we are reconvening here. And our next presentation is from Emily Ritchie, who's the Executive Director of the Northwest Cider Association. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, so Emily Ritchie here. I'm based here in Portland, Oregon, and thank you so much for having us. It's a total pleasure to speak to you about specialty crops. Carla, do you have the slides? Carla and I used to work right next to each other when I was the Food Corps Fellow at ODA, so I know her well. Thank you. Thanks, Carla. Okay, so next slide. We'll just jump right in. All right, so Northwest Cider Association, we were formed in 2010 as the cider industry is really kicked off, and our mission is threefold. We want to increase sales for cider makers, improve the quality, make sure it's staying high as sales increase and amounts increase. And then we also really strive to build community as as we work together as an industry. That's really important. So what I like to say is we're picturing our goal is by 2035, we'll look at Nielsen data and we'll see that the cider industry really accounts for 10% of overall beer sales. That's where we want to be. I also want, whenever you ask someone where the best cider to come from is, they should say the Pacific Northwest. And then we also want, other cideries to be professionally jealous of what we've got here in the Northwest. So next slide. So at its core, my presentation is talking about specialty crops, and cider is a wonderful value-added specialty crop product, mostly made of fermented apple juice, but there's a lot of creativity and innovation around cider making. And many of you, if you look around on the shelves, you'll see cider is often flavored with other ingredients that are grown locally. That might be caneberries, cranberries, stone fruit, pears. I even see hopped ciders and other botanicals in those ciders. So we have easily counted over 12 specialty crops that go into cider. Next slide. This is a great map. So as I said, we started in 2010. This map had maybe 5 cideries on it there in Oregon, including the Zielinski Cider Easy Orchards. Yeah, it's so good. You got to get Kevin to keep making it. We're now at 80 cideries in Oregon just in a decade. So we've exploded. It's been a lot to keep up with, and it's been a really fun industry to follow. Next slide. So as you can imagine, COVID didn't hit at a wonderful time for most industries, but for cider, it's been particularly difficult because we've been such a new and young industry. Since about 2014, we've seen double-digit growth in cider year over year, which comes with the caveat that that's pretty easy to do when you're starting from very little. But also with the note that that's not double-digit profit. That's money that is being reinvested into equipment, planting more apples, marketing, branding, all sorts of things. So we're seeing, because of COVID, cideries are reporting to us that they've lost between 40 and 80% of their sales in a year that they were anticipating growing maybe 10 to 20%. So it's been really tough as they've lost sales due to the closures of restaurants, bars, even their own tasting rooms, on farm or in urban areas. Next slide. So our FY19 grant, which I'll speak to in a second, is building on a couple other ODA specialty crop grants that we've received, including in 2014 and 2015, ensuring the supply of the fruit is there, as well as making sure production standards were there. I just really want to point out and thank you guys that this project builds on the lessons learned from these grants, and our industry would not be where it is today without specialty crops. We have a lot of road to cover still. There's a lot to do, and the industry is showing up in all the ways they can with volunteer efforts, and they're matching all of the grants that we get, doubling the money. But it's a really tough time. So we're really grateful that we had already had this grant in the works. So I'll talk about Y19. Next slide. Okay, so we have had to adjust a little bit because of COVID, but here's what we've done. So when we wrote this grant, at the beginning of 2019, we really wanted to focus the industry in on the gatekeepers, focusing on issues of demand, building the education for those bartenders who are talking directly to the customer about Oregon cider, to the wholesalers, to the distributors. That has been a lot harder to do with COVID. A lot of those folks are not necessarily employed right now, or they're in and out of their jobs. And the other thing we wanted to do is really grow craft cider in California. That's such an important market for cider. There's so many people there. There's a lot of dollars there. And there's actually not a lot of cider. The beer industry is growing there, and wine as well, but not a lot of cider yet. So we've pivoted to be able to do a lot of what we wanted to do digitally and virtually. So one of those things in our activities, we wanted to create content to really differentiate Oregon cider from the rest of the cider that folks were seeing on the shelves here and in California. That's often national brands that can make it there. So we were able to hire a marketing agency for the first time, and they've really created some beautiful content. You're seeing some of the branding here in these slides and the photography that we've created to really tell the story of what Oregon cider is and the farms that the ingredients come from. We've also been able to switch a lot of our in-person events to be virtual, to really educate consumers in addition to trade. Lots of distributors have happy hours and things right now that are virtual for all their employees. So we've been able to get in the slots there to talk about cider, but also to meet consumers where they're at. All of us are at home, we're online, we're looking for something else to do to learn something new, and we're actually catching a lot more consumers at a lower cost than we would have before. So it's kind of this push-pull project where we're making sure the trade is aware of our category, but also the consumer demand is there. So we're really driving sales through repeated messaging, as well as just awareness. We're in California, especially. Oregon is a little more advanced, but making sure folks know this is alcoholic cider. It's fermented from natural ingredients, things like that. There's been a lot of education still needed. So lots of repeated and consistent messaging. Next slide. So this is a screenshot of our annual meeting. Normally we have it in person over breakfast. This was well attended virtually instead. You can see many of our board members there. And we've been sharing lessons from this project with folks over town halls and webinars. Our annual meeting was virtual, and it's actually been easier for folks to access this way. Folks don't have to travel a long ways from their farms to get into the city. So that's been a nice sort of evening the platforms. So next slide, what we have learned, there's some challenges and some opportunities. So one of the challenges is that the market channels to reach folks have really changed. We've seen Facebook and social media generally is way more expensive because everyone's on it. And the time of day when you can reach people has changed incredibly. There used to be best practices of when you post. And now, you know, we're all easily on our phones or on our computers scrolling throughout the day. The social media channels have really seen that shift. People are just on all the time now. So we've been really grateful to have a marketing agency to work with who are watching those metrics closely. And we can communicate that directly to the cider makers as they're shifting what they're doing. Again, consumer behaviors change not only with our online and where we're getting our ads, but you know, we're at home more, so physical mailings are more exciting now. I love getting things in the mail. Also, the way we shop is really different. You know, we're trying to limit the amount of time we're out and about, so maybe instead of going to our favorite bar for a growler and a bottle shop and the farmer's market, you know, we're limiting our trip to just one stop to a grocery store. And so the opportunity for our craft cider makers or small guys to be found on the shelf is a lot harder. There's also this challenge of this growing digital divide. You've probably heard this term in terms of the urban-rural divide and, you know, internet access. We're seeing, in addition to that, also cideries, if you're a small company generally, whether you're cider or not, it's really hard to keep up with best practices on marketing digitally. It shifts so quickly, and that's where we've been able to come in and really help make sure the small guys who don't have a full-time paid staff person who watches their social media content have that opportunity to really, you know what the heck is going on and how to market now that everything's shifted. So the opportunities, though, on the other hand, are there. So regulatory landscape has shifted. As you guys probably know, in Oregon now, things like cocktails to go are more accessible. Same with delivering alcohol. Direct to consumer is now allowed. Mailing alcohol is a lot easier. So we've actually been working on a pilot project to get cider out across the country, so we don't have to just focus on smaller markets. So a lot has shifted in terms of what's allowed, and we hope that it stays that way and opens up those barriers. There's also opportunities in consumer behavior changes. You know, not only are we home a lot, but we're way more willing to get packages delivered, right? You know, we can get a box delivered of almost anything, including alcohol now. We also have this opportunity for collective marketing, and this is fairly new for the industry just in terms of having the funds. So next slide. In addition to our FY19 specialty crop grant, we were incredibly lucky to work with the ODA staff in May, who were so nimble and quick to pivot with us, right? The COVID hit in March, and by May, we were submitting a grant together to FSMIP, which is the Federal State Marketing Improvement Program. And we were awarded dollars, this is USDA dollars, in September to research and pilot 4 different direct-to-consumer avenues. So while trade is really hard to reach, and folks, you know, our bartenders, et cetera, are not necessarily being employed, this is an incredible opportunity to really hit home the direct-to-consumer market. And so we're piloting this, and we actually launched in December. We're really motoring this new Northwest Cider Club. So we shipped, you can see this picture of 6 Oregon ciders across the country. We had ciders from Astoria out to Hood River and down to Corvallis. So we represented a great region, and some really tiny cideries as well as some larger companies. And we launched this pilot. So it's the Oregon Discovery Box. We had 430 customers that picked up the box in the very first shipment, and we're going to continue this pilot moving in 2021. And you too can order it. We'd love for you to pick it up. The next box actually explores Washington ciders, but if you go to the next slide, Carla, there's the website for you guys to look at, nwciderclub.com. And we have goals that if we can extend this program, which we're going to be applying for FY21 funding for specialty crop, move it from pilot phase into a serious full-blown program, and we could reach thousands of customers, not only could we have those sales, but it's an incredible marketing platform where we're building these ambassadors. We're building folks who really know something about Oregon cider and know something about the ingredients that go into it, the terroir, you know, the styles, the sweetness levels. So it's this beautiful, elegant solution to larger problem or larger issues and challenges that the industry can face. So last slide, you've got my contact there. We'd love to chat with you more about it, and we're so grateful for all the support in terms of FSMIP and specialty crop from you guys. Thank you.
Emily, thank you, and congratulations on the growth of the industry. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Emily? It was really interesting. I didn't know anything about it, so really appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think Lauren is going to introduce the meat discussion with Jess and Isaac and Teresa. So Lauren, take it away.
Yes, I am going to introduce this, and am pretty excited to do so. Chair Halleck and members of the board, Lauren Henderson, Assistant Director for the Department of Agriculture. Carla, if you want to put the slides up, and while you're doing that, I can talk just a little bit. But just as a reminder for the board, this is related to the effort around increasing the capacity, frankly, of meat processing in Oregon. And I've tried to think of analogies of how to describe this effort. I used to start with, you know, ODA's part, which was the regulatory program, but really that's wrong. Oregon really does need more meat processing and has for a very long time. But along with that also needs market development and enhancement, and really the regulatory piece is the piece that follows along, because it has to meet or equal requirements of the federal Meat Inspection Act. And so this is an effort that is been put together, and I'm pleased to say we have a lot of interest. About 90 to 100 stakeholders have engaged in one way, shape, or form, all the way from some of our congressional leaders and staff to state staff to people from all over, I think, all parts of Oregon. And so to wrap this up and have people meeting together to talk about the needs has been wonderful. I'm not going to read the slides themselves because I want to hand it off to the staff to talk about their respective pieces. But this really, its intent is not to force anyone to do one way, I guess is the best way I think about that. That if you're happy with what you're doing in your business model today and it's working for you and you're using those USDA facilities, that's great. If you are a custom exempt facility and have a business model that works for you, that's good. It really is an attempt to fill in, I think, what I describe as gaps in our state for meat processing. You've probably heard producers talk before to the board. I know we have, about how hard it is to not only get scheduled in some of the facilities, but that there's just these large, I have to drive 200 miles maybe to find a place to do that. COVID, I think, brought about this subject even more as things became more local, because they had to be, and it brought it back up again. And I have to give deference to Representative Brock Smith. He's been a legislative champion on this for many years, and is still at it, and I think is introducing bills to help alongside this. You heard in Deputy Director Hansen's budget presentation, we do have the startup of 3 staff in our budget to get this started, and have worked with USDA on what that might look like, and I will let Isaac go from there. So with that, I'll do a close at the end. Jess, if you would get started, and then Jess, when you're done with your piece, hand it off to Isaac, and then Isaac to Teresa, and then we'll close. So with that, take it away, Jess.
All right. Chair Howlett, members of the board, my name is Jess Paulson for the record. I think that it'll be a little bit of an overlap when it comes especially to the marketing section and the supply section, because we really are the flip sides of the same coin. We've really approached the marketing element of the work group as a feed-in to the supply chain, improve the understanding of what it is that the rest of the market looks like, so that they can feed that into their consideration of what the supply chain should look like and where their hurdles are. Carla, could you move me to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the work group meets about twice a month, and we have a kind of ranging from meeting to meeting in who we have joining, but we have a lot of groups that represent kind of the smaller producers, which is really great. We really benefit from some others that come from OSU, so it's wonderful to have that participation. We've taken from the beginning a look at how we can break up the various channels that meat products move in the state, and we're addressing each of those in kind of separate meetings by inviting members of those sectors to come and speak or testify to the work group. In our last meeting, we had a couple of people who were involved in farmers markets and who are largely vertically integrated in the production of their meat and the marketing. As Lauren has been telling us from the beginning, we don't want to take a field of dreams approach to this of if you will build it, they will come. However, I think a lot of our conversation really does show that that may very well be the case. There is strong demand. It's going to be a matter of how well can we put together the supply with that demand so that we don't have large gaps where parts of the animal, for example, are piling up because we don't have a channel for those products to go into. So in the future conversations, we're going to be looking at some of the challenges that we have from, say, a retail perspective when the supply chain for meat is quite industrial. Most of our animals are moving out to the Midwest and then moving back into channels that go to multiple stores. Many of those stores have standards that we are exploring. If you're going into, say, Whole Foods, there's multiple kind of like certifications of how that animal was raised, how it was treated, all things that potentially their consumers are looking for, have interest in. Each store has something that's similar to that, and most of those stores are going to be looking for product that can move across state lines, which is going to be a challenge with a state meat inspection program, at least in the initial phases. And so it may be that we're going to be more reliant on stores that are more local in their procurement and more local in their advertising. Early on, and I think to carry on down through some of those points in the slide there, one of the benefits of having the inspection is that rather than on the hoof slaughter, if it's inspected, we could potentially be taking some of the material that's left over or some of the product that hasn't been sold and put into the food banks, which current on the hoof slaughter does not currently allow. So we'll be talking with them, as well as demand for non-beef, non-pork, non-poultry species, which I think Teresa will address a bit more. And then the hides, hooves, and blood, various products that come off of that can be an expense or even a hazard if we don't have a way to dispose of it, and finding channels for those to go into, whether it's pet food. Kind of the issue that we're finding there is that it's a volume problem. We don't have enough to really be able to cover the cost of shipping it to somebody who would be able to use it. So a consolidation of some sort, whether it's industry or state-led, is likely going to be a required solution. So a couple of the products that we would like to develop related to this project is education for the consumers. I think is being the obvious one, convincing people or at least educating them about how a state inspection program is equivalent to USDA so that people are comfortable with it. If there's going to be a different seal, we may be able to use USDA Choice, USDA Select, for example, but there may be something else that we want to put on there that really ties back to Oregon. And the one that I think is maybe less self-explanatory would be the various standards that you would maybe need for some of these channels to educate the producers to understand what those needs are. What is it that you have to have already done in the raising of that animal? And then what do you have to protect as it goes through the supply chain before it gets to the consumer to be able to meet the standards of the retailer or whichever other channel that the meat is going to be sold to the consumer. In the exploration of what a brand would look like, we run into the same kind of problem that we've seen in the past when we look at an overall Oregon brand. And that is we need to keep it simple because there are a lot of different factors that can confuse or split the market. I think that there is a need for us to keep the costs down. There's little or no appetite for adding oversight or certification that certain elements of production have been met in a local supply chain. And even the definition of what is local is something that we're going to have further discussions about. Is it an animal that comes from out of Oregon but is slaughtered in Oregon? Is that considered local? Do we need to have some kind of pedigree that goes with it? Again, getting back to the keep it simple, if it's slaughtered in Oregon, we probably want to just make sure that we're convincing Oregonians that there's a reason to desire a product that was raised and slaughtered locally, that's part of their resiliency of their food supply chain, and trying to bolster what that market demand is for product that's coming through our supply chain. But what we're finding right now is that the production is really where the constraint is. And so we'll be holding our next meeting next week, and we'll be doing this for the foreseeable future on a bi-monthly basis. So from that, I think we'll turn it over to Isaac and hear about what the regulatory process looks like.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, Chair Halleck, members of the board. I'm Isaac Stapleton for the record. So myself and our program manager, Rusty Rock, are overseeing the Regulatory Rules Advisory Group. I think overall, this is probably the most straightforward or easiest part, even as cumbersome as the rulemaking process is to meet the USDA standards. I mean, Justice talked about a lot of moving parts that need to come together to make this work. And so, I think I have a little easier, but there are still some challenges. So we've been in regular contact with USDA throughout this process. They've been supportive in giving us information. We have a meeting actually later this week on Friday to continue to talk about the specific sections of the CFRs that we need to adopt to meet the USDA standard of same as, so that the program can eventually grow into a cooperative interstate agreement with USDA, which would allow producers that are under the state meat inspection program to sell their products across state lines. Initially, it'll be just products being sold within the states. So we hope to make sure that we set up our regulatory structure to meet that additional higher standard of same as for the future. An interesting point when talking to USDA about this process and getting their guidance and walking through the steps, they haven't actually done this since I believe 2009. So many of the folks who had previously walked states through this, the last states to come on, no longer are in those positions. So they're kind of learning along the way as we are. There are several other states in the same boat as us, but I guess my understanding from our conversations is Oregon is out in front in terms of our timeline. So up on your screen is our estimated timeline. It's not a guarantee. It's something that we're shooting for. It's pretty aggressive. I think some people would like to see it happen faster, and I can definitely understand that. So we're currently in the process of rulemaking and drafting those rules. In order for us to apply to USDA to have a state meat inspection program, we need to have all of our state's rules in place and be ready to go before we can submit that official request letter. So that's the process that we're currently in now. Once we get that formal approval from USDA to enter into this agreement with them, then we will be able to open up and have access to the training for our staff to implement the program. So, and those trainings are quite long, as you can see from the timeline. You know, inspector training and vet training can take 4 to 6 months. And on the next slide, it actually talks about the length of time for some of those. So if you look, inspector training is a 4-week long training course. And the vets are 10 weeks long. So those things will take time for us to get our staff through. USDA has stated that they will make seats available for states that are seeking state meat inspection programs. They're all held virtually at this point, which is a plus. I think there are actually sections of the vet training that can only be done hands-on, but so that will take us about a year to get staff through in seats. And then once our staff is trained, we'd be able to bring a plant on under inspection into the program. We have to have the program up and running for a year, meet all the requirements of USDA through the audit process. We do our own self-assessment and audit, and then they come in after that point and do a final audit to make the determination of equal to or same as. And so that's kind of laid out there in terms of the timeline. So realistically, you know, we're not bringing on any plants until January of 22, and then really being to the point where USDA says you've got a solid program, and we, you know, move into that normal cycle of audits after 23. So I guess we'll wait for questions at the end, and I'll hand it over to Teresa.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Teresa Yoshioka. I'm here to talk about the supplier work group, and with the supply channel a little bit limited right now, there's been some great discussions, and we've had great participation in all the work group discussions. Ultimately, we're trying to identify the challenges that both the producers and the processors are facing, and what it would take, or what they say it would take, to expand the capacity for meat processing in Oregon. Next slide. So there's the processors and the producers. So looking at the processors, we've had some participation of processors reaching out to them separate to invite them to the meetings. We were calling during their most busy time. So custom exempt is backed up a year about. Most of our processors are backed up similar kind of time frame. We asked processors about their constraints, and one of the biggest issues they identified, number one, is waste disposal. And part of that is there's things going into our waste channel, as Jess mentioned, that would be ideal if we could find a market for some of those products. One of the biggest value items that is going into the waste channel is hides. And part of this is due to the loss of our export markets for hides, but that is something that is a constraint for all of our processing in the state, is the waste disposal. Then there's many other business barriers and challenges that they face, because they're all small businesses, some slightly bigger, but they all face a lot of constraints, challenges, and managing their workflow and their workforce. And understanding the regulatory environment. They're excited to learn about what we can do on the state meat inspection, but that's a long journey, and some of the pressures in that system are looking for solutions sooner than that. We have partnered with the Niche Meat Processors Association to send a survey out. So we've gotten qualitative information from each or from many of the processors in the state. But this survey, we hope, will give more quantitative data about what they're seeing. they have sent it out to the 90 processors in the state, and we are looking forward to getting the results back. Next slide. So the other side of the supply channel for meat in the state is the producers. And when I'm looking at the producers, these are producers that are also marketing the meat. And we have a lot in the state and all across the state. And it's amazing of the diversity of sizes and species that they cover. Of course, we heard loudly that they lack access to slaughter processing facilities. That's a pinch we know statewide. The other thing that was very interesting that came out is some have identified the gap is not necessarily as harsh in the first phase, but is more in the next step down, which is more the cut and wrap, value added, chilling, cold storage capacity. Some of those things are what have been identified. So there's some subtleties in what types of processing is available. And as Lauren kind of highlighted, how to reach those, especially some of our smaller farms that are traveling distances with different species in different directions. And some of those small farms are actually interested in starting their own processing. And those are ones that are reaching out and looking at being state facilities. There's a long way to learn about what that would take and what the financial model would look like for them. But that's what they're looking at right now. We have put together the questions in our last call. We'll be sending out a survey to all these producers to really capture more information about where the pockets are of the greatest need. So on these calls, we've had not just your beef, pork, and lamb producers on the call, but we've also had representatives from the bison and goat and even rabbits. So nice representation, but it highlights the diversity of needs across the state. And we're really hoping that this producer survey will get us some nice data as where we are now and where the producer side and the producers that are marketing their meat see the greatest need. Thank you.
Okay, Lauren, do you have some wrap-up comments?
I do. Thank you. First of all, a big thank you to Carla, Jess, Teresa, and Isaac for continuing to work with the groups. I will just say part of the challenges and kind of what's the next steps here is really the facilities need help with their infrastructure investments to get either a current facility up to the federal requirements or a new facility that might come on board to make sure that it meets those requirements. And that's going to take some investment. And I know the legislature may entertain some bills that have those. It's not a cheap affair. Some facilities could need $500 to $1 million to make their facilities match if they're going to go particularly from a custom to an inspected facility. And so there's big investments there. But I think as I think about it, this is not going to be successful without sustained commitments by everyone. Certainly for ODA, that's a commitment to a regulatory program that can be nimble, because we may only start with one facility, and as they come online, you double to 2 and 3. I don't see the state creating hundreds of facilities. I would be happy, frankly, if we could get 5 to 10. I think that would be wonderful. Particularly if they were in the right parts of the state. So I think about it in those terms of commitments. Obviously, our producers and our facilities have to have a business model that pencils out for them and works for them in order to be sustainable. And so I think we all need to be smart in how we do this. It's important. I've had this on my bucket list for years. I hope it works. But I will say there are some things that the stakeholder groups are talking about that can still be done and not have the regulatory program. Certainly the focus on market development and market opportunities and some of the challenges that folks are having maybe can be peeled off and worked on. And if that helps people, it was worth the effort in those. You heard the waste disposal issues. That has been an issue for quite some time, and how to work through that. And so that will probably involve some other state partners. And so I will just leave you with that, which we're going to keep at it. And I hope that at some point in time, a board meeting can have a producer or a facility come and say, it worked for me. Here's what I'm doing, and here's what I've been able to do with that. And then the other parts of this is I actually believe that it will help the food insecurity in some of our local communities when folks can donate directly into a facility and have it go through a state meat inspection facility or a USDA facility and be able to be donated back into that community where it's needed the most. And so I'm pretty excited about the but cautious about, can we really, as a state, get it across the finish line? And my hope is that we can. So we'll leave to questions, and Jess and Teresa, Isaac, stay with us here. So if there's questions that I can't answer, which I probably can't.
Thank you, Lauren and team. That was really well put together. Does anybody have any questions for any of them about this program? I have one question, which is back in the day when I was at DEQ, we used to have, I think there was a big rendering plant over in Madras or something. How many of those big facilities like that actually exist in Oregon? Are they having to ship out to have the slaughter and then they come back into the state? Teresa's nodding. So how is that all working?
We're shipping to rendering facilities out of state. That's what's costing our huge waste costs and issues.
Thank you. That's what I thought. Anybody else have any comments or questions for them? All right, thank you. That was very well done, all of you. So we're going to move into board business for our last half hour. The first item on the on board business is the ODA program reports, and this is a written report that Carla sends out with the packet, which hopefully all of the board members have reviewed. And I have a couple of questions on the report, which I'll try and do quickly, and then anybody else can jump in. For Isaac, on the what is the pasteurized milk ordinance and what does it do?
Thank you, Chair Halleck. So the pasteurized milk ordinance is the standard regulatory framework which all dairies are required to operate under in order to have milk shipped throughout the United States. So that's something that gets updated on a routine basis and goes through the process of revision and updating, and then we have to adopt that by reference. It's something that all of the dairies within our state are already complying with. At this point, it's just an administrative function to make sure that our rules reflect what we're regulating to.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a comment. When I read about on the shellfish program, I looked up domoic acid on the internet, and you guys really need to be careful about opening up these seasons if there's any concern about domoic acid. It is bad stuff. So that's just my editorial comment about that. And I saw we had an update, I think, sent out to the board on crabbing and where the various zones and where we are. So just be really tough before you decide to open them up. And I have a question on I probably should know this. Livestock, ended the calendar year inspecting 988, 988,370 head of cattle. What's the purpose of the inspection? Inspect them for what?
So those are brand inspections.
Okay.
So those are done at any sale or transfer of ownership of an animal.
Okay. Okay, that's good. And then this is for Jess or anybody, because probably everybody but me, embarrassingly, knows what this stands for. But I do not know what BIPOC stands for.
So it stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color.
Thank you. And I may not be the only one in the world who doesn't know that at this point. So whenever we refer to it by the acronym, anywhere, we maybe should spell it out at some point just to be sure that everyone does know what it stands for.
Yeah, we can do that. And I should have mentioned, it's usually people shorten it to BIPOC.
Okay, thank you. This is shipping point inspection. There's a note about transportation is an issue, availability is low, and demand is high. I was just wondering if anybody could give a couple of examples of what that means.
Chair Howell, this is Jess Paulson for the record. With the downturn of economic activity because of the pandemic, we've seen both sea and land transportation being constrained as shippers were basically storing their vehicles or their vessels in order to save costs, and that has put increased costs on shipping and containers going towards Asia, where shipping vessels are able to make significantly more money on the voyage from Asia to the United States, such that they really don't have an incentive to even wait for US or Oregon product to be loaded and then sent back. They just want to have it returned to Asia as quickly as possible in order to get that higher cost or higher revenue return. Similarly, the cost of trucking across the United States has also increased significantly over the last year. Constraints in the number of vehicles, the number of drivers, we think is largely behind that. But being a state that's pretty far removed from where a lot of our customers are, the inability to find containers or vessels to be able to carry your freight to Asia, or to find trucks to be able to carry your product to the markets out in the East, it's a big constraint for a lot of our producers.
Thank you. For Stephanie Page in the Natural Resource Program, you're mentioning the expansion of the SIAs into maybe not so welcoming parts of the state. And I'm just wondering if you could expand just a bit about some of your strategies for dealing with that, and also what the impact on that program is going to be of the positions that you're losing in the program.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Stephanie Page. First, regarding when we hear concerns in an area that we're moving into, we got some really good feedback from the Water Quality Advisory Committee the other day about trying to anticipate those concerns a little more and to reach out to local community leaders and develop a more tailored plan to the local area when we think that there could be difficulties. So I think those are some strategies that we're going to focus on at the kind of the county or the district level. And then another strategy that's worked really well for us in individual circumstances when we've observed a problem during our remote or roadside evaluations and a landowner has denied us access, is that we reach out to community leaders or reach out to organizations that particular landowner is likely connected to and ask for their assistance in communicating with the landowner. We recently had a situation like that where the membership organization was really helpful in getting us the information that we needed about the property. You had also asked about the impacts of the projected reductions. So in the Soil and Water District program, that position provided a lot of ongoing communication with soil and water districts. The last individual in that position reached out to districts on a regular basis just to see if they needed operational assistance or guidance. We had hoped to bring in another manager in the SWCD and Ag Water Quality program, just because that is a very large number of staff in that section of the Natural Resources program. So I think the impact is that the manager that we have, who is extremely capable, will continue working with the team of staff there. And then in terms of the impact of the 2 technical positions, we had 2 vacant positions that are proposed for reduction in the governor's recommended budget. And so what we're doing is reassigning 2 staff who conducted primarily technical work, riparian technical work, and hydrology-focused technical work. We're reassigning them to do compliance-related work, partnership work with soil and water conservation districts, and strategic implementation work.
Okay, thank you very much, Steph. Any other questions from board members on the report from the staff? And thank you all, the staff, for putting those together. I know it takes you some time to do that, and we appreciate it for you letting us know what's going on. The next item is our OWEB report. Barbara Boyer is not with us today. And I would just mention to board and staff members who know Barbara, her husband is battling a very bad cancer, and she's at OHSU Night Center with him today. So those of you who know her, I'm sure she would appreciate it. Just a note or something to let her know you're thinking of her. Okay, before we get into the resolutions, just really quickly, it's time for us to think about who's going to be the next chair and vice chair. And typically we have a nominating committee that is the current board chair and the 2 past chairs. In this case, since Marty Myers passed away, it would be me and Tyson Raymond and Barbara Boyer. And I've talked to both Tyson and Barbara, and they are willing to do that. So we will serve as a nominating committee for the next slate of candidates. And as your current chair, I would just let you know, and so that means that we will probably be reaching out to folks to see if they are interested in even playing that role. Particularly when it's virtual, I just want to let everybody know that if you're going to do this job in a way that is really helpful to Carla, helpful to the director, you gotta be on your game. I prep about 3 hours for this. It's a whole different ball game to do it online, I feel, than it is necessarily when you're in a room and people can kind of step in and bail you out if you mess up. So think about it if you're interested in being chair or vice chair, that you need to be ready to put some work into it. So for the resolutions, I guess we will, I don't know how I chaired work group B, so I know what I'll do for work group B, but work group A, I'm not sure who's handling that and how you want to handle that. Is that Stephanie or somebody else? Or Carla?
I chaired work group A.
Okay,
so
Brian.
Kick off on that one. Yeah, so we, Brian Harper here. We had 4 resolutions. We ended with 3. The first one was the pesticide resolution. And that one we essentially wanted to add language to. It was pretty brief. We brought up FIFRA and IPM into that. So we expanded the background and then expanded on the resolution. There was no mention of FIFRA in there, and that's essentially our backdrop, what we operate off of it comes to pesticides. So they just basically added some language in there. And the second two we combined and we archived. Goodness, I gotta pull these up. 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so we archived 203, and then we added relevant language into 274, seemed to make more sense. Certainly wanted to emphasize the importance of OWEB and the collaboration with ODA and OWEB. So the coexistence resolution 298, that got a bulk of the responses on public comment. And we really didn't want to change much in that one in the end after kind of discussing it. Tice had some pretty good points as to how we operate as a board, kind of what our role is, and ODAs. There was a lot of questions on the science that we based our plan off of. We certainly don't feel like that's our job, but we did want to throw some balance in there based on the responses we got from public comment, which had to do with alternate control methods being non-lethal. We certainly felt that it was important to keep the lethal control method in there. Say there's a wolf hanging off your cow or in hot pursuit sort of thing. But we did want to try to find some balance in there based on what we saw in those public comments. So yeah, Stephanie, feel free, or any other members that were part of that meeting, fill in if I missed anything, please.
If I'm understanding correctly, you would like the board today to approve resolution 274 and resolution 298 to keep active with the revisions that the work group proposed. Is that correct?
That's correct. It also includes 024.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So approving 3 resolutions, 024, 274, and 298 with the revisions that the work group recommends. Do we
Correct.
have a motion for that from someone? Well, since I said it, I'll move it.
This is Elin. So moved. Sorry, I couldn't unmute quick enough.
Okay. You want a second? I jumped in and moved. Would you second, Elin?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board would approve resolutions 024, 274, and 298 as revived. All in favor, say aye, or put thumbs up or whatever.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Those are approved. Okay, thank you, Work Group A. So Work Group B,
Question, were we also archiving 203?
yes, but I don't, oh, do we have to do that? That's a good question. Yes, Carla says yes. All right. So could I have a motion from someone on archiving resolution 203?
I had some, I wasn't in work group A, but I had some feedback that some folks thought that 203 was really important to keep around. Some people that I talked to felt that the soil and water districts are like kind of our best ally for a lot of the work that OWEB sort of has a hand in. So I don't know, they didn't want to see that disappear from there, I guess, if that makes any sense. And that the conservation work that they do with kind of hands, like boots on the ground type work with farmers and ranchers is kind of one of the best ways forward for enhancing watersheds. And it's sort of related, but I don't know if we just get rid of it. I didn't see that part come into the new wording and stuff on let's see, I got these all mixed up. Was it? I
On
mean, is there
270.
anywhere in there that it's included in the OWEB related resolution? I mean, I can see merging them, but if it just goes away, there were some folks that thought that that was a pretty important thing to have.
So, Josh, if I could address that. So I know Stephanie could probably talk more about this because I was not at this work group meeting, but they did include language that says the Board of Agriculture recognizes the importance of local partner capacity, including but not limited to county noxious weed board control boards and the soil and water conservation districts. And then there was another sentence about just the importance of local partners, the SWCDs, that they provide that technical and financial assistance to agricultural landowners. So I do think at least part of it is included here. Stephanie, I don't know if there's anything that was not wrapped into the resolution 274.
Sure, Stephanie Page for the record. The resolution relating to that cost share program was passed, I believe it was in the early 2000s, really before the current funding structure for soil and water districts is in place today. So you're right, the exact language in that resolution wasn't consolidated into 274, but 274 includes kind of the updated situation of how soil and water districts are funded and how on the ground conservation is funded. And that's through the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. So they support both kind of that operational capacity or the operational organizational growth and development, and then also the on the ground conservation.
Do we have any other resolutions that relate to the relationship with soil and water conservation districts for ODA? Does anybody know? If we don't know at this moment, it might be
I don't
good
know.
if we do maybe take a look at those and share, particularly with Josh, to be sure that that everything that should be covered about that relationship is getting covered in our resolutions. That'd be great.
I just wanted to say, I think that what was, to put it a little bit more bluntly, people see local soil and water districts as more of a partner, whereas the other side looks like an enforcement type of deal. Just in general, as a nurseryman or a farmer, and they were kind of like, no, I like that. I hope it stays. But it sounds like I overlooked the wording that you mentioned, Stephanie. That's now in 274, so that's good.
Chairman Halleck,
yes.
Being on that work group, we did not want in any way, shape, or form diminish the soil and water conservation districts. They're essential for ag. So you know, if Josh is okay with that included in that, but the intent definitely was not to diminish.
So we good, Josh? Thumbs up? Okay. Okay, work group B, I will report on work group B.
Stephanie?
Yes?
We still need a motion to archive.
Oh,
2 and 3.
sorry. Yeah, that's right. You're right. Thank you, Carla. Thank God for Carla. Okay, do we have a motion to archive resolution 203?
So moved. Brian
Okay,
Harper.
Brian has moved. Do we have a second?
I can second.
Louisa has seconded. All in favor say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Okay. It is archived. All right, work group B now. Resolution 169, need for a documented agricultural workforce. We are recommending that the work group, that the full board approves resolution 169 as written with technical updates. And the two technical updates, there was a reference to the farm gate value of being $5.2 billion. We changed the language to being over $5.0 billion because the number varies sometimes. And we also, it had indicated that agriculture is the second largest economic sector in the state. It's now the third, so we corrected that. So if I could get a motion on approving resolution 169 from someone, that would be great.
How can I make a motion?
Thank you. Josh has moved approval of 169 with the technical edits. Is there a second?
Second, Tyson.
Thank you, Tyson. All in favor, aye, or thumbs up? Okay, 169 is adopted as amended. Resolution 266, collective bargaining for agricultural workers and employers. The work group is recommending that we hold this resolution open to gather additional input and possible revisions to it. Was there any further input since last night from any of the commenters? We had a lot of comments on our resolutions from the Farm Bureau in our discussion, and we're going to do some more follow-up with them at some point. And I don't know if any of that follow-up has happened since last night and today, but if not, we will continue to keep it open and work on it. So nothing, Director Taylor? Okay.
I would have to defer to if Jess did that. So if Jess is still on.
Okay.
If he's been able, I don't know.
No, we've not had any engagement with them since last night.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 314, permitted uses on land zoned exclusive farm use and on high value farmland, agricultural land. This again was recommended to the full board to hold the resolution open to gather additional input and possible revisions. We got some feedback, particularly from the Farm Bureau, that they needed more time to look at this because there are a lot of different opinions in different sectors of agriculture about this resolution. So we will be working on this one as well. Resolution 315, working lands conservation easements. We're recommending to the full board to approve it with edits, and those edits are, there was simply the removal of a whereas that referred to the legislature establishing a task force, and that is outdated. That's not a relevant whereas anymore. So we removed that, and then we would like to keep the resolution on the books with that one change. And I would enter, yes.
Chairman, well, maybe you need a motion before discussion. Okay, I'll wait.
Okay, trying to do Robert's rules. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution 315? Everybody's busy reading
Johnson,
the resolution.
I move.
Thank you, Shantae. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Brian Harper, second.
Brian Harper, seconds. All right, discussion.
Yeah, I just had a question because in one of the comments, and I maybe not as familiar with this, but talking about the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program, and I didn't know if maybe that deletion made that happen, or did you just not want to include language to that effect?
We did discuss it, and Jim Johnson, do you want to respond to Elon's question?
Yes, Jim Johnson. Basically, Ellen, that's exactly correct. The reference that's being deleted really related to when the Oregon Ag Heritage Program was being developed and established by the legislature, and then the work groups associated with that. So what this resolution does now is really discusses the broader issue of conservation easements and the use of them to protect agricultural land and other issues related to that broadly across the board, not just as it relates to the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, but also to other uses of it, such as the Oregon Ag Trust, such as other land trusts and the like. So we were trying to become much more of a broader policy statement than just focus on what OWEB's doing.
Okay, thank you.
Is that sufficient, or would you like to see that language in there?
I'm just wondering why it would hurt to you know, since commenters did mention it, and it being an important program that's supported. But I'm, you know, I don't know if Director Taylor, you have an opinion on that or not.
No, no opinion, Director Taylor?
Well, I think it's what the board wants to do with this resolution. We have been very supportive of the Ag Heritage Commission. The board obviously nominates several of the commission members to sit on the commission. And so I think it is not inappropriate if you wanted to include that, but that is a board decision.
So looking at the language of the resolution, Jim, in the second, would it be an additional be it resolved, or could it be incorporated into the second one, supports a focused use of conservation easements, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I guess I don't understand what you'd want to plug in there. I mean, are you basically saying you want to support the Oregon Ag Heritage Program specifically, as opposed to the use of easements and what the Oregon Ag Heritage Program is doing, you know, specifically? I don't understand, I guess.
No, I think, so what I heard, and Elin, correct me if I'm wrong, as in addition to working land easements, some of the things, Oregon Ag Heritage Program is one way to do that, because a component of that is easements, but there are also other components like succession planning tools and those types of things. So I think we could add it as a component of the larger support around working land easements. And I think what we could do is take that back and bring it back to the next board meeting with an insertion there. And yeah.
I would agree with Director Taylor on that. I can insert that type of language. I've been doing some work on that in another area, and so it wouldn't take us a lot of work to do that. But I would rather not hurry it right now, and instead you know, put that in and bring it back to you all.
Okay, I think that's fine, but we do have a motion on the floor, so to adopt it as presented. So I'm calling for a vote on that. All in favor?
Could we just move to table it to our next meeting?
Sure, that's fine. I don't know processed well enough. Do we have to deal with the motion that's on the floor before we can move to table it?
No.
Okay, so we'll table it till the next meeting. Okay,
we should vote on that. Okay.
Oh, we should vote on that. Okay. all in favor of tabling resolution 315 till the next meeting to incorporate some additional language, say aye or thumbs up. Okay, thank you very much. Resolution 316, federal minimum wage parity. The work group recommends to the full board to approve with the technical updates. And on 316, there were some percentages and dollar amounts that were needed to be updated, and those were updated. And that is everything that was done on this one. So is there a motion on resolution 316 to approve with the updated figures?
This is Elin. Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second, Shantae Johnson.
Thank you, Shantae and Elin. All in favor, say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Okay, resolution 316 is approved. And then the last one is resolution 317, and the work group is recommending to just leave this resolution as is and not take any action on it until 2022 to gather additional input and for possible revisions. So that's FYI, I guess. And so that doesn't, we don't need an act. I don't think we need an action on that.
And just a question, why all the way to 2022 versus later in the year? I didn't know if there was
Because
some magic time.
there was a magic time. A little part of it is COVID and the relationship to COVID. The other part is, though, this would be a new program activity if the department decided to take it on. So we want the review to coincide with potential budget development for the next budget cycle. And so that would mean to dovetail with, to deal with COVID and also to dovetail with the budget, it would be the beginning of 2022 that the board would look at it again to see if they wanted that new part of the program. But it could start later in 2021.
Yeah.
So if I could add.
Go ahead, Alexis.
Sorry to cut you off, Elin. Part of it also is there's some ongoing conversations with some stakeholders that we're having, and I want to have that full picture, so then we as an agency can also develop if we think we're in the same spot as where we have been historically on taking on the inspection and enforcement component of FSMA, or if our position has changed, because I want to make sure I bring that to the board, and this gives us some time to do that work as an agency. But certainly it could be possible that we are have our component done of where we think we are as an agency before 2022. This was just something I had recommended to give us some time. I think we would have already had that done if COVID had not hit, and we've obviously had to have a lot of other things that we've been focused on for the past year.
If it is 2022, would you have enough time to get it in the budget then? I think that I would have thought you would need a little earlier, but otherwise you'd have to wait till the next.
Maybe, I don't know if
biennium.
Yeah, if Lisa's on, I'm trying. I think I suggested 2022.
This is Jess Paulson for the record. It would be federal funding. The application for the B portion would bring another $250,000 for us to fund the enforcement.
Okay, so it's all federal funding, and then it would be, I guess, any time, and then we need to get it through. We don't have any matching funds for the state for it.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay.
For the record, Lisa Hanson, Deputy Director. So if we were to apply to Part B, I mean, I think they're right, we would be applying for the federal funds. We would do a request through the legislature. There's a process where we would request permission to apply for the grant. We would have to be granted permission. Then we would go back retroactively if we were successful in getting it. I presume we would be. And then they would add additional limitation for us. I think if you think about it in terms of the stepwise, one of the things that we've talked about at ODA over time, and if you go back into the resolutions, it was when and if ODA took on the inspection and enforcement part, there was an understanding that it would come with money from the federal government to do that and not just rely on state funding and be an additional burden onto the current food safety program and license payers. So that's been part of the philosophy that we've used over time. Clearly, it could be revisited if there's a desire to approach it differently, but I think this was the start of that conversation. Does that help our process for everybody?
Thank you.
Okay. We're running a little late, so if there aren't any more comments on the resolutions, we'll just finish up with telling the director and Carla what the board would like to have in the board report. Excuse me, not the board report, the newsletter topics. And that does remind me, though, that you've been sent the draft language for the board report, and I know Director Taylor has been working on some revisions to that language already, but if people have thoughts about that and you want to send those to Carla, Carla, I don't know if you have a date by which you want the comments on the board report.
As soon as possible, our goal is to have a final report completed and distributed by the end of the month. So if we could get comments in by the middle of next week, that would be great. I also have a mock-up that I can show you of the report as it stands today, minus any edits to the text if you're interested in seeing that briefly.
Sure, if it's easy to put up, why don't you just go ahead and put it up really quickly? And I would just mention that I reviewed some of the modifications that Director Taylor made to the first draft, and they're pretty extensive. So if anybody is thinking of digging in and really reading this and providing a lot of editorial comment, I suggest that we see Director Taylor's edits and work from that version of it.
And I can send that a revision out here by the end of the week for you to comment on. I'll note that the one section that had all those statistics listed is this graphic page here. Those were statistics that we could pull together and show in a graphic format. So this is a similar layout to the report that we had in 2019. So this is the one side of it, and then this is the second side. So you can see it's pretty text heavy. I know you can't read the detail on this, but it will be laid out essentially similar to the one from 2019. So I can send out the updated text for your review here by the end of the week, and you can comment on that.
Are you going to need pictures for Elin and Josh?
No, we already had those.
Okay, great. Okay, and then back to the newsletter where we're reporting basically on this meeting. Usually I think we indicate what resolutions, actions we took, or at least ones that we adopted. We have I don't know if we had the budget in the last one or not. The governor's recommended budget, was it in the last newsletter? Because we just met really recently. But anyway, we should probably have the budget if it wasn't in the last one. I like the cedar.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say that.
Cider.
Market for Oregon crab cider.
That was good. And the meat one I thought was good too.
Yep.
Do we usually report on when we have the legislative panel, do we usually say anything about that? Make mention that they.
We do usually have a short paragraph that we had representatives come in and talk to the board and share their priorities and updates, so we can include that as well.
Anything else anybody wants?
No, it's covered.
Okay. Let's one note on the chat room that Dave Losh had sent a message about USDA with regard to the meat presentation. They have data for new facilities. Anyway, he sent a link if anybody needs to look at that and didn't see it. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'll just mention our next meeting is May 18th and 19th. So we'll work to get an agenda pulled together for that. Work groups on the 18th and meeting on the 19th.
Yeah, Chairman, I have a conflict. I chair a meeting in DC at that time, but I'm trying to get it changed. But we have people coming from all over the world for it or not, depending. So it's in flux.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that. Oh, and that reminds me, Director Taylor, do we think we'll have some new board members by the May meeting?
That is the hope and the plan as of right now.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, thank you all, and we are adjourned.
Right. Thank you. Bye.
Nice job, Chairman.
Yes. Yeah.